Chapter 107. Yes, Li Yuran replied, and gently placed the jade coral on the table in front of Li Shang. Then, she firmly pressed one side of the jade coral, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. Her whole body shone with a golden light. It was obvious that she was operating the Xian Qi with all her might. The jade coral made a clanging sound. It was originally sparkling and translucent like jade, but now there was a faint light seemingly leaping out from the jade coral. Strands of blue qi, almost imperceptible to the naked eye, slowly rose from the surface. The moment the blue qi rose, the entire body of the jade coral turned into a strange blue color. The time has come. Li Shang's eyes flashed with a trace of desire. He calmed his mind and slowly stretched out his skinny right palm, gently caressing the other side of the jade coral. The moment his palm touched the jade coral, the minute qi that was stirred up by Li Yuran, at a speed visible to the naked eye, scrambled along Li Shang's arm and slowly penetrated into his body, bit by bit. As the blue qi entered his body, Grand Preceptor Li Shang's originally emotionless face could not help but reveal a trace of heartfelt joy. He could clearly feel that his meridians were feeling much better at this moment. As the blue qi continued to enter, Li Shang felt his body becoming more and more relaxed, and even his soul was trembling with joy. His dantian, the place where Junjian Tian punched it, had long since lost all feeling. Now, there was a faint pain, which was then gently soothed by the blue qi. His dantian and meridians, which had been damaged for many years, were also recovering at an extremely slow speed. Both of them closed their eyes and clearly felt the changes. Both of them were filled with joy. The two of them did not notice that the jade sea coral had suddenly changed its color. In an instant, it had become pure white. Under the cover of the faint blue gas, there was a ball of white spiritual energy violently rushing left and right. The blue gas had originally tightly wrapped around it, leaving not a single drop. Although the white gas was violent and agile, it could not rush out. But with Li Yuran's urging and Li Shang's absorption, the density of the blue qi became thinner and thinner, and the white qi became thicker and thicker. Gradually, the white qi began to overpower the host. There was only one last step before his dantian could recover. The old scars of decades had haunted Grand Preceptor Li for half his life. Now that they had recovered, how could he not be excited? Not ecstatic? Even though Grand Preceptor Li was used to seeing great winds and waves, he still felt that his mental state was a little unstable at this moment. Li Shang was overjoyed and said in a trembling voice, "Yuran, my dantian, should recover soon." Li Yuran was ecstatic as she said, "Grandfather, the shackles that Junjian Tian had placed on you can be removed from now on. My Li family will also never fall." Ha! Both grandfather and grandson smiled sincerely at the same time. Their smiles were filled with hope and longing. All of a sudden, amidst this joy, an unforeseen event suddenly occurred. At the most critical moment when Grand Preceptor Li's dantian was about to recover, the completely different heaven and earth spiritual qi that Jun Moxie had injected earlier suddenly broke free from the shackles of the blue qi. Like an evil dragon that had suddenly broken free from its shackles, it followed the direction of the blue qi at lightning speed and charged forward with irresistible force. A wisp of abnormally violent and swift air current, with a so sound, escaped into Li Shang's recovering meridians like a ghost. Then, it barged its way into his dantian, which was about to fully recover, like a hot knife through butter. Caught off guard, Li Shang only felt a loud bang coming from his dantian. His face immediately turned deathly pale. The dantian that had almost fully recovered suddenly collapsed once again. It was as if a complete disc had been broken from his dantian. The cracks were like crisscrossing tree roots. Rapidly spreading towards the surrounding meridians, Li Shang spat out a mouthful of blood with a qi sound. He lost all his senses, and his body fell limply to the sky. "Grandpa!" Li Yuran cried out in shock. Her mind was in a mess. At the same time, that Li Shang fell. The piece of jade coral exploded without any warning under the extreme entanglement of the two spiritual qi. Li Yuran, who was close by and worried about her grandfather, hurriedly stretched out her head to check. Immediately, her head and face were smashed by the fragments. She screamed. Her head and face were covered in blood. What's going on? Why? Why is this happening? Who can tell me what's going on? Li Yuran could no longer maintain her poise. She looked up to the sky and screamed. At this moment, Li Yuran, who was usually as calm as Mount Tai, had a face full of panic, helplessness, worry, malevolence, and blood. She looked like an evil spirit. Jade coral. The jade coral was obviously useful. Why did it suddenly explode? Master promised it before. Li Yuran did not care about the wounds on her face. She tore at her hair as if she had gone crazy. To be honest, even Jun Moxie himself did not know about the changes that had happened here. Jun Dashao would never have thought that the qi that he had inadvertently injected into the jade coral would achieve such a glorious result. Dashao's original intention was only to cause some damage. He could not stand Li Jun's face. At most, he hoped that the spiritual qi would be able to destroy the jade coral. But Jun Moxie would never have thought that the moment his spiritual qi merged with the yuan qi of this world, its power would be no less than a landmine. This explosion had completely cut off Grand Tutor Li's hope of recovering his Xian qi. The current Grand Tutor Li would not be able to recover his Dantian, even if a deity descended to the mortal world. Not only that, Li Shang's already weak body became even worse after this unforeseen event, and he almost lost his life. It was really a case of intentionally planting flowers, but not intentionally planting willows and growing shade. A small capital and huge profits. Apart from small capital and huge profits, there seemed to be a lot of side effects. Li Yuran's once handsome face had more or less been left with 7 or 8 scars. But these 7 or 8 scars were equivalent to disfigurement. If Li Yuran hadn't instinctively closed his eyes, perhaps he would have become a blind man by now. But even so, Li Yuran would continue to wear a veil for a long time come. It was like looking at flowers through a fog. This explosion was really a little unexpected. Some families were happy, while others were sad. Compared to the Jun family's excitement and the Li family's fear and misery, the Dugu family's mood was like that of a burning volcano. Ever since Princess Raimu had paid a visit and left with Dugu Xiaoi under the arrangements of the old lady of the Dugu family, the Dugu family was like a huge barrel of gunpowder that had suddenly exploded. Dugu Zongheng pointed at Dugu Wudi's face and cursed him for a good 2 hours. Occasionally, he would punch and kick him in anger. Dugu Wudi grimaced in pain and became a yes-man. He did not dare to resist. In fact, he was no less depressed than his father. Are you a pig? You useless son of AB*TCH. I told you to look at your daughter. Is this how you look? Yeah, you bastard. You're a pig. Dugu Zongheng was furious. Even if you like a pig, it's still better than Jun Moxie. Damn it, that's Jun Moxie. Are you blind? F*CK. That's Jun Moxie we're talking about. Are you F*King blind? Dugu Wudi's face was full of spittle, but he didn't dare to wipe it off. He stammered with difficulty. I don't know. If I had known. This sentence brought about a new round of storm. Bah, if you don't know, who would know? What else do you know? You're a father. Dugu Zongheng was about to go crazy with anger. That Jun Moxie is famous for being a debauchee in the capital. Good people stay away from him, and bad people stay away from him. Which daughter of a good family would want to marry him? Not to mention our Xiaoi. Is your brain stuffed with tofu dregs? Or is it filled with water? How about getting kicked by a donkey? What a bastard. What an idiot. Idiot. How did I raise you in the first place? My wisdom has been wasted on a pig like you. Dugu Wudi passively endured the rain of spittle. He felt that he couldn't open his eyes. Father, please calm down. Xiaoi's absent-minded state has only just begun. It seems that there hasn't been any substantial progress between the two of them. There's still time. Dugu Wudi's words had thoroughly poked the hornet's nest. Dugu Zonghung flew into a rage. He raised his leg, and Dugu Wudi's tall and sturdy body was sent flying like a rubber ball. He stamped his feet and cursed. You? Are you even talking like a human? What do you mean by there hasn't been substantial progress? Don't tell me that you want to make substantial progress. It's not too late. Do you want to wait until your daughter is pregnant before it's too late? Do you think that June Moxie, that son of a bitch, wouldn't do such a thing? The more he spoke, the angrier he became. Dugu Zonghung grabbed his son and started to madly beat him. Usually, Madame Dowager would have come out to mediate at such a time. However, this time, she just stood at the side and did not move at all. At this moment, she actually fanned the flames and added, "You deserve to be beaten. How did this old lady give birth to such a blind son?" Dugu Zongheng's anger subsided a little after he had madly beaten his son. His face turned black as he said, "This matter must stop. You take advantage of the time that Xiaoyi is accompanying the princess in the palace. Quickly resolve this matter for me. This old man will kick you until you explode if I hear any similar news again. Why are you still not going? Why do you want this old man to go personally?" Great General Dugu Wudi crawled up from the ground with a bloody nose and swollen face and fled in panic. Dugu Wudi returned to his courtyard after he had eaten the old man's first meal. He was immediately thrown into chaos. First, he vented his anger at his wives. Then he passed down an order. Dugu Ing, Dugu Xiong, Dugu Hao, Dugu Jiet, Dugu Cheng, Dugu Shang, and Dugu Qian are to immediately return from the barracks outside the city. No mistakes are allowed. Military law. Family law will be meted out for any delay. Great General Dugu had decided to start with June Moxie. That repulsive brat dared to seduce my daughter and cause me to be taught a lesson by my father. Isn't he tired of living? Do you think that I won't dare to touch you because your grandfather is protecting you? Just because I got beaten up today, I'll peel off 3 layers of your skin. Not to mention that you've even provoked my precious Xiao Yi. Humph. Chapter 108. The 7 names mentioned by Dugu Wudi were the next generation of the Dugu family. The names were given by Dugu Zonghung. The last character of the 7 names added up to heroes and legends rush forward. It was a very imposing name. Dugu Zonghung had originally planned to use this as the first half of the couplet. He had also prepared a second half. Dragons, tigers, leopards, wolves fill the sky. He had been waiting for his 3 sons to make a second half of the couplet. But he had not expected that after these 7 sons, the family's baby would come out, Dugu Xiaoyi. Just as Dugu Zonghung was looking forward to it, there was no more news. This made Dugu Zonghung extremely depressed. He could only swallow the second half of the dragons, tigers, leopards, wolves fill the sky couplet. As for the wind and cloud general couplet, there was no need to mention it. A good couplet was useless. Naturally, Dugu Zonghung had been greatly disappointed in this matter. He had scolded his 3 sons for being good-for-nothings and for not living up to his expectations. Naturally, although Dugu Zonghung was rude and unreasonable, he knew that his daughter-in-law was not someone he could casually scold. Therefore, he only scolded his sons. Of the 3 sons, only the eldest, Dugu Wudi, was in the capital. His other 2 sons, Dugu Wushang and Dugu Wudong, were guarding the east and south sides of the empire. They refused to come back no matter what. Actually, they had been beaten up by the old master, and there were repercussions from it. The generals of the empire had to have some dignity. With the title of guarding the border, they naturally didn't want to come back if they could. It wasn't that Dugu Wudi didn't want to go out and hide from the old man at home. Unfortunately, his 2 younger brothers were outside, and he really couldn't go out. Other than coming back every year for the old master and old lady's birthday. Even if the old master asked him to, he would just pretend to be deaf and mute. And the 2 times they came back every year, Dugu Wudi and his son would not even be able to sober up before the 2 brothers had already slipped away. The other 2 sides of the Tianxiang Empire were guarded by Grandpa Jun's men. They had nothing to do with the Dugu family. Dugu Wudi felt very wronged. I am the eldest brother. Why should I have such a hard life? How long would he have to endure the days of being scolded every 3 days and beaten up every half a month? At the end of the day, I'm a general in my 40s with a son and a daughter. Just as the Lee family was in a gloomy mood and the Dugu family was furious, Jun Moxie, the instigator of one of the families and the main culprit of the other family, was drinking merrily with his grandfather. Jun Wui was dressed in a green robe. His Adam's apple kept moving up and down as he swallowed his saliva. This was according to Jun Dashao's doctor's advice. Jun Wui had just recovered from his injury, so he shouldn't drink alcohol for the time being. However, this grandfather and grandson pair were smacking their lips as if they were extremely satisfied. When he smelled the fragrance of the wine, Jun Wui almost couldn't hold it in anymore. Emosia, I'm very curious about your martial arts and your strange heart sutra. Jun Jan Tian tossed out a question as he drank his wine with relish. Even Jun Wui opened his eyes wide and pricked up his ears when he heard this sentence. This was because Jun Moxie's martial arts were too unimaginable. Both of them were very knowledgeable, but they had never seen or heard of any xianqi that could have such an effect. Not only could it heal injuries, it could also repel poison. Moreover, it didn't emit any light. Moreover, its power was incomparably great. Such a miraculous skill should be very famous in the Xian continent, but there had never been any news of it. This was too strange. Jun Moxie was silent for a while. After a long time, he said, "Grandfather, third uncle, can you not ask about this? I really don't want to lie to you." Oh, this old man understands. Jun Jan Tian suddenly realized. The expert who taught you martial arts didn't want you to say it, right? Haha, many people have this kind of strange temperament. Besides, if this kind of miraculous martial arts were to spread, it would only bring you harm. The fewer people who know about it, the better. This old man won't ask. And I won't ask. And Xia has this kind of miraculous martial arts. Not only can we not ask, but we must also keep it a secret. Jun Wui nodded. Otherwise, who wouldn't covet this kind of miraculous martial arts? The consequences would be unimaginable if even a little bit of news were to leak out. That's right. No matter what, Xia is a descendant of our Jun family. This alone is enough. Jun Jan Tian laughed heartily. He was very gratified. The way he looked at Jun Moxie became even more affectionate. Jun Moxie stared blankly. He didn't expect that before he could make up a reason. These two had already made up a perfect reason for him. Xia, your third uncle has also recovered. What are your plans? Tell me. Jun Jan Tian was in a good mood. The more he looked at his grandson, the more satisfied he became. He stroked his beard and asked, "Plans? What plans can I have? Once third uncle recovers, won't I be free? I'll continue to be a debauchee. How good is that?" Jun Moxie drank a mouthful of wine and continued to work on the wild boar meat on the table. His hands were greasy. "Everything else will naturally be arranged by you, grandfather. However, there's one thing. The news of third uncle's recovery cannot be spread out in a short period of time. Especially now that he has advanced to heaven stage, it cannot be spread out. On this point, grandfather, it's up to you. You can continue to wander around with a sad face." At the mention of this matter, Jun Jan Tian frowned. He felt a little annoyed. He scolded, "Nonsense, this old man used to worry because of you two brats. Now that you, Xia, have worked hard and Wu Yi has also recovered, what else do I have to worry about? All the worries of the past are gone. How can I continue to pretend?" He said with a long sigh. It was not that he could not pretend, but Jun Jan Tian was really tired of those days of frowning. In the past, he had to worry, but now he had to say that he was worried. How could he not be depressed? Then what should I do? Jun Moxie spread out his greasy hands. "You just don't want to worry? That's easy to do. I'll go out and create some trouble for you, making you frown all the time. For example, I'll smash the magnificent jewel hall, catch the 3 princes and beat them up, or kidnap a few women. You're looking for a beating." Jun Jan Tian knew that he was joking, but he was still angry. "That day, I still haven't settled the accounts with you about the magnificent jewel hall, and you actually brought it up yourself. Let me tell you, some things are really above the state apparatus. For example, the magnificent jewel hall. No matter what, you cannot provoke the magnificent jewel hall. Even if you reach the peak of Great Master Shen Xian, the The magnificent jewel hall is not something you can afford to provoke. Do you understand? Junjan Tian's voice was very solemn, and the wording was quite harsh. What is the origin of the magnificent jewel hall? Jun Mo Xia's curiosity grew even stronger. Even the peak of great master Shun Xian cannot provoke them. They are above the state apparatus. I can only tell you that the magnificent jewel hall is only the tip of the iceberg. But even so, it is enough to deter the world. There are also several great master Shun Xian masters. As for the deeper things, this old man is not very clear. I only know that you must not provoke them. Junjan Tian sighed and looked at Jun Wui with some regret. Jun Wui's face twitched, and his eyes revealed a touch of pain. It was as if his whole soul was being stabbed at this moment. But in the blink of an eye, he calmed down. He sat calmly, but was much quieter than before. In that case, from now on, all the secret forces of the family will be handed over to Wu Yi. As for Mo Xie, Junjan Tian pondered for a long time, but could not make up his mind. Finally, he gave up and said, "You do what you need to do. When you have free time, help your third uncle." Jun Wui and Jun Moxie nodded. Jun Moxie reminded, "Grandfather, third uncle, before third uncle takes over the family's power, we must first completely clean up the spies in the family." Junimo Xie paused for a moment, and then stared at the two men. Third uncle's recovery is obviously a great thing for our Jun family. But it's an additional variable for outsiders, and it'll increase the threat. Especially, Jun Mo Xie smiled faintly as he pointed his finger upwards. His meaning was self-evident. The secret forces of the Jun family, grandfather, may have been thoroughly cleaned up. There are no people from the other families. I can believe this. But there must still be people from the imperial family in the family. And grandfather, you also know about these people, right? I'm just turning a blind eye. Jun Moxie smiled, but now it is a critical moment. So we must cut them off. Junjan Tian looked at his grandson in shock. Every word that Jun Mo Xie had said was the truth. He had guessed correctly. After a long while, Junjan Tian bitterly twitched the corners of his mouth and said, "That's right. There are indeed people sent by the emperor, and they have been around for more than 10 years. Even for the Jun family, they have not done anything wrong. That is because the Jun family has never done anything to threaten the imperial family. Moreover, we have always been loyal to the imperial family. Of course, they do not need to report. But now it is different. Although we are not disloyal, but once the news of us gets out, just suspicion will be enough to exterminate our family." Jun Moxie's eyes shone as he said word by word. Now, even if they have betrayed the imperial family and become part of the Jun family, we cannot take this risk. Now is not the time to be soft-hearted. If we do not act decisively, we will only suffer. Junjan Tian sighed. The wrinkles on his old face seemed to have deepened. After a long time, he said, "You are right. I will give a list of names to the two of you. As for what to do, I will leave it to the two of you to decide. There is no need to inform me." He stood up and left with heavy steps. Mo Xie, isn't this a little too cruel? Your grandfather cannot bear to do this. Can we? Jun Wui frowned. A look of struggle appeared on his face. Jun Wui wouldn't have hesitated to attack an enemy, but he couldn't bear to attack a man who had made countless contributions to the Jun family. Even if they knew that they were spies sent by the imperial family to spy on the Jun family, but they had still made great contributions to the Jun family. Chapter 109. I don't want to do that either. These people are your and grandfather's old subordinates, and even comrades who have gone through life and death together. But we can't put the entire Jun family survival on a glimmer of hope. If we don't do this now, we will have to bear this cruelty in the future. Third uncle, they are not alone. Will they all betray the royal family and join the Jun family? This is simply impossible. Once our concealment is exposed, it will arouse the royal family's suspicions. The hundreds of people in the Jun family, the thousands of people in the Jun family's fiefdom, and even the military generals who are attached to the Jun family will all be implicated. That is the lives of tens of thousands of people. I think third uncle should know better than I do. Third uncle told me about the helplessness of the aristocratic families disciples the day before yesterday. How come you're so sentimental when it comes to yourself? Third uncle, you're about to take over the responsibility of the June family's life and death. Don't tell me you're going to shrink back. June M.O. Xie calmly analyzed the situation. There was a hint of cruelty in his expression, and his tone of voice was somewhat sinister. If this goes on, do we have to hide it until we die? June Wui frowned. Third uncle, isn't your vision a little too limited? Look at the magnificent jewel hall now. June Moxie laughed and leisurely said, looking at the whole world, which emperor would dare to touch the magnificent jewel hall? June Wui was aghast. It turned out that his nephew's ambition was actually so great. But the magnificent jewel hall is the result of countless generations of hard work, and our June family. June Wui frowned deeply. The June family has me, and you, and grandfather. June Moxie snorted and gently swirled the wine glass in his hand. The three of us are enough. Our June family will be stronger than the magnificent jewel hall. June Moxie's calm face revealed an unparalleled confidence. June Woo looked at his nephew in a daze, and his heart suddenly welled up with a feeling of heroism that he hadn't felt for a long time. He almost blindly chose to believe his nephew's words, because if that was the case, then his own would really have hope. Third uncle, your old injuries have just healed and the poison has just been removed. During this period of time, you must focus on recuperating and not rashly use your Xian Qi. Although you have now entered the Tian Xian realm, but most of it comes from the blazing heart meridian and not from your own bitter cultivation, so your foundation is quite unstable. I have already instructed the kitchen to specially prepare a medicinal diet for you, third uncle. During this period of time, for at least 10 days, your Xian Qi can only be nourished in your Dantian to ensure that all of your Xian Qi and Jin Yuan are under your control. At the very least, you must reach the point where you can freely withdraw your Xian Qi. During this period, you must absolutely not act rashly. You must also refrain from joy and anger. If you have nothing to do, just use your pure physical strength to move a little. This is something that third uncle should understand. June Moxie looked at June Wui meaningfully. I believe that after 10 days, third uncle will definitely find out what kind of surprise his current body can give you. I understand. 10 years have passed. A mere 10 days is nothing. June Wui nodded heavily. The 300 people who trained previously have not returned yet? June Moxie casually spun his wine glass. After the 300 guards had trained to a certain degree, June Moxie began to arrange the death training. These 300 people would go to the Tian Fa forest to hunt low-level Xian beasts, Xian Dan, and fur. Moreover, there was a strict rule that they had to hunt at least 10 or more 5th-rank Xian beasts. The higher the rank, the better. As for the low-level ones, the more the better. If they did not complete the mission, they were not allowed to return. Before leaving, June Moxie said with a murderous aura, "This time in the Tian Fa forest, everything is up to you, including your own lives. The death rate is estimated to be more than half. This is the beginning of the road to the strong, and also the beginning of the first round of eliminations. There's only one consequence for being eliminated, and that is to step on the road to the Yellow Springs." In addition, this was also a way for June Moxie to find spies within the group. After the group entered the Tian Fa forest, Grandpa June's army would guard the way back. Anyone who returned without permission would be killed without mercy. Any birds that flew out from the Tian Fa forest would be shot dead. Then, they would silently kill the person who sent the message. These were all carried out by Grandpa June's secret bodyguards. Every one of them was a Jade-level Xian Qi expert. Naturally, there was no suspense in the outcome. Since the start of the mission, there have been 27 people who revealed their traces. Or perhaps they were unable to catch up. All of them have been confirmed dead. As of now, there are no more messages being sent out. June Wui's expression was one of exhaustion. I didn't think that there would be so many people hidden amongst the ordinary soldiers of my June family. Do they really think that my Jun family is easy to bully? Jun Moxie lowered his head and calculated for a moment. Then he smiled and said, "No messages have been sent out for such a long time. That means that they're almost completely wiped out. As for the remaining people, I can finally be at ease. As long as they can return, they are worth nurturing." Jun Mui nodded slightly and stood up. He reluctantly looked at the wine cup in Jun Moxie's hand and returned to his own courtyard. Jun Moxie sat quietly for a moment. Then he silently laughed and stood up. He walked towards his own courtyard. The second batch of wine should be coming out soon. This batch was the real deal. Suddenly, the capital seemed to be in a state of chaos for a moment before everything calmed down. A horse galloped to the front door of the Jun residence. It was a servant of the Imperial Palace. Grandpa Jun hurriedly went out and headed towards the Imperial Palace. At the same time, the Imperial physician of the Imperial Palace rushed to the Li residence. The Dugu family's father and son also left everything behind and hurriedly rode towards the Imperial Palace. In addition, the leaders of the various families and the higher-ranked officials also gathered in the direction of the Imperial Palace. To outsiders, this was undoubtedly a major event. A major event that could shake the entire Tianxiang kingdom. In fact, it was indeed a major event. The Imperial tutor, the minister of the Imperial Palace, Li Shang, suddenly fell ill and fell into a coma. His life was at stake. Imperial tutor Li was the head of the civil officials in Tianxiang Kingdom. How could the Imperial Palace not be in chaos when he suddenly collapsed without any warning? His Majesty the Emperor was furious. He sat on the dragon throne and slammed the table. A good civil official went to cultivate Xianxi. Now, not only did he fail to cultivate Xianxi, he was tormented to the point where his life was on its last breath. He had been in control of the Imperial Palace for so long. Now that he has collapsed, the entire Imperial Palace is paralyzed. How can I not be distressed by such a situation? At this point, His Majesty the Emperor suddenly stopped talking. He rubbed his forehead and sighed weakly, because when he looked down, His Majesty the Emperor realized that he had done something stupid, a super stupid thing. The people below, Grandpa Jun was frowning. His eyes were staring blankly at the empty space in front of him. His soul seemed to have left his body. It was obvious that he had not heard a single word. Dugu Zongheng tilted his head and used his carrot-sized finger to pick his nose. From time to time, he would flick his nose. What kind of attitude is this? Tang Wanli frowned and looked at Dugu Zongheng. From time to time, his lips would squirm as he cursed in his heart. Occasionally, he would hastily dodge the flick of his nose. Old Master Tang may be arrogant towards the Meng family and the Li family, but he did not dare to say anything in front of this big brother. Even if he wanted to curse, he only dared to curse in his heart. The Meng family's old man stood solemnly. His eyes were on his nose, and his nose was on his heart. The Murong family's old man, Murong Feng Yun, was leaning against a pillar in the main hall. His white beard had a sparkling thing on it. It seemed to have come from his mouth. The Song family's old man lowered his head. It seemed as if he was testing whether his head could be inserted into his crotch. His Majesty the Emperor suddenly came to his senses. He wanted to slap himself. If you're angry, just vent on the court officials. Why do I have to vent it on these old things? What's the difference between playing the lute to a cow? What's the use of it? Finally, he impatiently waved his hand. Go, go, go. It's all my fault. I was wrong. Why bother you old immortals? Go, 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 go back to sleep. Don't tire yourselves out. The old men seemed to have awoken from a dream. One by one, they apologized and thanked the emperor. Dugu Zongheng took a few steps before he suddenly turned back and kicked Murong Fengyun. Wake up. Don't sleep anymore. Go home and sleep. Murong Fengyun groaned and stood up with sleepy eyes. He looked helpless. Your Majesty, this old subject is guilty. This old subject is selling rice cakes, old and old. I actually fell asleep in your Majesty's golden hall. This, all of you get lost. Go back home and sell rice cakes. His Majesty the Emperor's roar scared the officials who were waiting for the Emperor in the side hall. They trembled. The few old masters looked like they were in a sorry state, and they were scared witless. As soon as they got out of the palace gate, they looked at each other, laughed evilly, and parted ways, swaggering away. The emperor's thunderous roar could already be heard from the palace. Old bastard June, stop right there. June Tian had only taken a few steps when he heard someone calling him from behind. He turned around and saw Dugu Zongheng rushing over with a black face. Are you looking for a beating? June Tian frowned. You've become bolder today? You dare to shout at this old man? You're rebelling, you old monkey. Fu *K. Who do you think you are? What did this old man give a damn about you? Dugu Zongheng snorted and said, This old man will help you teach that grandson of yours a lesson. I'll peel off 2 layers of his skin. Do you have any objections? What? What did you say? June Tian turned around and was about to leave. But he suddenly turned around. His eyes were like 2 bolts of lightning. You want to teach my grandson a lesson? As he said this, the blue light on his body suddenly soared, and a tyrannical aura filled the air. The cloak embroidered with blood orchids on his body fluttered without any wind, making a sound. The old man was clearly enraged. There weren't many people in the capital who would have the guts to openly make a move against June Xie under such circumstances. However, there were a few people from the Dugu family who didn't fall into this category. For example, Dugu Wu Di, Dugu Xiao Yi, and Dugu Zongheng. And Dugu Zongheng was someone who would do what he said. Chapter 110. Dugu Zongheng suddenly felt suffocated. Even the air around him seemed to have stopped flowing. June Tian was giving him a huge amount of pressure at this moment. He had never imagined that June Tian would make such a face for a useless grandson. He couldn't help but snort in anger. Glaring at June Tian, his aura burst out and resisted June Tian's aura, not yielding an inch. You actually treat a piece of trash like a treasure? Damn it! Even if I teach him a lesson, it would still be the good fortune of your grandson's 8 lifetimes. June Tian looked at him coldly. Dugu Zongheng, how did my grandson offend you? Why did you have to personally deal with him? Give me a straightforward answer. Dugu Zongheng snorted, his leopard eyes wide open. If he only offended me, what's the problem? This old man is a magnanimous person and would at most treat him like a fart and let him go. But your grandson should never have dared to provoke my family, Xiao Yi. Let me tell you, June Tian, nothing has happened yet. If something had happened, I'm afraid you wouldn't even be able to see your grandson's corpse. If Xie loses even a single hair, Dugu Zongheng, I guarantee that the Dugu family will regret it for the rest of their lives. June Tian looked at him for a long time before slowly opening his mouth. If anything happens to my Xiao Yi, June Tian, I guarantee that your June family will regret it more than my Dugu family. Dugu Zongheng looked at June Tian without backing down. Lingling said, The 2 military bigwigs stood outside the imperial city like fighting cocks. Their 4 eyes were wide open, and it looked like they were about to fight. The bodyguards of both families were sweating profusely as they paced around in circles, but there was nothing they could do. If these 2 were to really fight, even the emperor might not give them face. At this time, I was wondering why there was something wrong here. It turns out that you 2 old things were just joking around. Grandfather Tang Wanli's voice was very cheerful. I say, old June, old Dugu, aren't you 2 ashamed? If the 2 of them added up, it would be at least 156, right? Look at all of you who are about to enter the coffin. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at by the younger generation? Old Master Tang put on an air of virtue and prestige. Compared to me, the 2 of you are really lacking in poise. The 2 people who were confronting each other spat at the same time, and the clouds and mist in the sky instantly dissipated. June Tian coldly snorted. He looked at Tang Wanli and Dugu Zongheng with an expressionless face. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked away. It's too late for you to go back now. Dugu Zongheng snorted twice. My family's 7 brats have already gone to the June family. Old June, you should buy some medicine to treat your grandson's injuries. Dugu Zongheng laughed heartily, but he was actually quite regretful in his heart. Who would have thought that Junjan Tian would think so highly of his grandson? Not only was he a debauchee, but he had also turned into a good-for-nothing. What would he do if his 7 boys didn't know how to control their strength and beat them up? Those 7 boys had always regarded their little sister, Dugu Xiaoi, as a treasure. So when they heard about this matter, they all screamed and swarmed out like a swarm of bees. Then he received the news that Li Shang had met with an accident and had gone to the imperial palace. Although he had ordered to capture Jun Moxie before he left, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to relax until he was captured. Junjan Tian's body paused for a moment. Then he suddenly jumped up. He didn't even mount his horse. Instead, he directly circulated his Xian Qi. A blue light burst out, and he disappeared with a schwa sound. Only a roar was left in the air. Dugu Zongheng, I'm not done with you. It's too late for regrets. Grandpa Jun was really angry. He had always called himself I, but now he had unexpectedly burst out with vulgarities and called himself I. Old Dugu, how did you provoke Grandpa Jun? Is there a need to make it so tense? Grandfather Tang wanly asked curiously as he watched from the side, his head full of confusion. Dugu Zongheng's belly was full of anger. He rolled his eyes and scolded, Go do what you need to do. It's none of your business. With a whoosh, he jumped onto his horse and galloped away. These words made Tang Wanli so angry that he almost couldn't breathe. After a long time, he heavily exhaled. He was so angry that his fingers were trembling. Old man, if it weren't for me, you two would have already started fighting. I try to mediate with good intentions, but you actually angered me to death. Old Master Tang's white beard trembled as he thought about how ungrateful these 2 people were. His old face looked as if it had been injected with duck blood. If I encounter such a thing again in the future, I won't be a human if I stick my head out again. Suddenly, he gathered his chi and roared. This old man is the son of a tortoise, a bastard. His voice was like thunder and spread far away. The old men of the big families who had not gone far staggered at the same time. That sounds like that old bastard Tang, Wan Li's voice. What's wrong with him? Why is he so crazy? He actually announced to the world that he's the son of a tortoise, a bastard. Did he get kicked in the head by a donkey? It would be a pity if they didn't go and take a look at such a big piece of gossip. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. After a discussion, the old men excitedly rushed towards the Tang family. Each of them was faster than the other, fighting to be the first. The lethargic atmosphere in the court had long disappeared without a trace. Even if there were a few more strong young men, they would still not be able to compete with them. If His Majesty the Emperor saw this scene, he would probably vomit blood in anger. Jun family unaware of the impending disaster, Jun Moxie directed a few strong middle-aged female servants to carry a few huge water jars. They were taking out the bright, pinkish-yellow wine from the distilling boiler that he had made himself. Seeing the water jars slowly fill up one by one, Jun Moxie rubbed his nose and sniffed the air. The air was filled to the brim with the fragrance of the wine. It could also be said to be the smell of distiller's grains. His heart was blooming with joy. Jun Moxie had never liked to drink hard liquor. Today, he made these jars with the intention of exchanging them for a large sum of money. With his current understanding of the world's wine culture, he believed that his vision of 10,000 taels of silver for a small jar would soon become a reality. Of course, it wasn't all for the sake of earning money. It was also to let these country bumpkins see what was called wine. China's wine. Wine without this young master's approval is trash. Only wine with this young master's approval is considered good wine. 10,000 taels of silver for a small jar. He wouldn't lower the price, even if his entire family were to be executed. Damn it, they can't even brew wine, yet they still have the nerve to live. Aren't they all going to slit their own throats? Aren't they afraid of making a fool of themselves? In fact, Jun Moxie's real intention was to sell off this batch and never sell again. In the future, he would only brew 10 to 20 caddies every month, enough for his family to drink. As for others, even if His Majesty the Emperor wanted to drink, young Master Jun would still stiffen his neck. If I say no, then no. What can you do? First, I'll whet your appetite, then I'll stop it with a crunch. From now on, I'll never brew wine again. Then I'll let you all go back and drink that trash, making it hard for you all to swallow. June Moxie was looking forward to that time, to the expressions on the faces of these rich nobles. It'll be very exciting, right? It'll be very pleasing to the eye, ha ha ha. I'm waiting for this kind of excitement. June Moxie hummed a little tune. At that moment, the expression on his face could no longer be called an evil monarch, but an evil god. It had to be said that a person who could come up with such a sinister idea was really evil to the extreme. A loud bang came from the main door, coming from afar. It interrupted June Moxie's thoughts, making him very surprised. This is the June family. Is there really someone who comes to cause trouble in broad daylight? Isn't this too novel? His guess couldn't be more correct. A scream came from the main door, and not long after, he heard heavy footsteps coming towards him aggressively. With a bang, the main door of the small courtyard instantly turned into a pile of debris, and a loud voice roared. June Moxie, you bastard! Get out here right now! Why does this scene look like the gangsters coming to find trouble? At that moment, June Moxie almost thought that he had gone back in time. The sound of thumping sounded, and June Moxie stretched his head to take a look, only to see 7 bear-like strong men like 7 iron towers, each of them swinging their arms, their faces ferocious, and they rushed in at a speed of 1.5 feet with each step. Saving a life is better than building a 7-story pagoda. Can a 7-story pagoda be thicker than these 7 men? The legendary pagoda is a tower. June Moxie immediately made a decision and quickly ordered, "You go tell third uncle, don't let him come over, I will handle this. I can definitely handle it. Kerr, go tell sister-in-law, don't let her come over either." The only thing that June Moxie was worried about now was that June Wooey couldn't help but rush over, and that would be terrible. Although June Wooey's current strength had indeed risen to the level of Tian Xian, the Tian Xian's true qi in his body was extremely unstable, and not all of it could be used for his own use. If he didn't stabilize it for a period of time and acted rashly, once the Xian qi broke through his meridians, there would really be no way to save the situation. As for Guanqing Han, no matter what, she was a girl, and her hair was long, but her knowledge was short. Coming over would not help at all. June Moxie could see at a glance that Guanqing Han's strength could at most deal with the weakest of the 7 men in front of him, and she would most likely lose. Grandfather had gone to the palace, and it seemed that none of the servants in the house could afford to provoke these 7 devil incarnate. Besides, all the big families had a basic tacit understanding, and that was to not get involved in the affairs of the younger generation and let them toss and turn. It seemed that he would have to go into battle alone. June Moxie obviously knew them. The Dugu family's Heroes and Legends Rush Forward was a famous figure in Tianxiang City, and his reputation was much more resounding than June Moxie's. Although they weren't friends on the same level, but they still saw each other often. The only thing that June Moxie was hesitating about at this time wasn't whether or not he would be abused by these 7 bear-like men, but rather, he was having a headache. If I were to kill or cripple these 7 guys, what would the Dugu family do? Would they go crazy? And would the June family be able to withstand it? Chapter 111. Apart from the fact that some of these fellows were a bit older and some were a bit more inexperienced and immature, all of them basically looked the same. They looked like septuplets. All of them were tall and sturdy, with round eyes and beards on their cheeks. At first glance, these 7 heads looked a bit like a rectangle lying on the ground. They were really too awesome. How did they manage to feed them? This nest of them were all Zhang Fei's ultimate style. If they were brought to modern times to act in the romance of the 3 kingdoms, none of them would need any makeup. Moreover, they would definitely be more original than the original, fiercer than Zhang Fei. June Moxie suddenly felt a kind of amazement in his heart. It must have been hard on the 3 brothers of the Dugu family. What kind of tacit understanding did they have for their sons to be born like this? They were really too talented. June Moxie, where do you think you're running to? Dugu Ying, who was the leader, had sharp eyes. He saw June Moxie at a glance and roared like thunder. The 6 brothers behind him shouted in unison, "June Moxie, where do you think you're running to?" thunder from the 9 heavens. The flowers and plants in the courtyard were frightened, and they couldn't help but sway in the wind. June Moxie was admiring the creator's uncanny workmanship in his heart. The world was really full of strange things. Suddenly, his vision darkened. 7 iron towers stood in front of him. The 7 big faces were as black as the bottom of a pot, and their 14 eyes were staring fiercely at June Moxie. Even the shortest one was half a head taller than June Moxie. Those who didn't know would definitely think that June Dashao owed these fierce brothers a lot of money. In the past, the story of Snow White and the 7 dwarfs was passed down through the ages. Today, I will personally reveal the unspeakable story of June Moxie and the 7 giants. June Moxie let his imagination run wild. He took a step back and looked at the 7 brothers. If he didn't take a step back, he would have to look up. Putting on an elegant smile, he said, "So, it's big brother 7 Dugu. My apologies for not recognizing you. I'll call someone to serve tea. Don't even think about slipping away. You're still too inexperienced to play such a trick in front of me." Dugu Ying's face was filled with malevolence as he clenched his fists, causing his knuckles to crackle. "June Moxie, you really have guts to bully my little sister. You have guts. See if I don't beat your pretty boy face into a persimmon today." "What? Bully your sister? Dugu Xiaoyi? Where did this come from? What's going on?" June Mo Xie was stunned and couldn't figure it out. This time, his expression wasn't fake. "I've always been the one being oppressed. When did I turn the tables?" "I don't know." In his heart, he had a deeper understanding of the saying, "The Dugu family has never been reasonable." It's obviously your little sister who bullies me every day. Even if you're distorting the truth, you shouldn't do this, right? I haven't even complained to Grandpa yet, and you're the villains complaining first? This is ridiculous. Just that little girl, Dugu Xiaoyi, with your Dugu family's tyranny. Who in this world dares to bully her? This is simply an autumn fairy tale. You still dare to deny it. Do you want to deny it? Dugu Xiong roared from the side. Halfway through his roar, he suddenly raised his head in confusion. His large nostrils took 2 deep breaths and blinked. What's that smell? Why is it so fragrant? It's too fragrant. The other 6 people were indeed a family. Almost at the same time, they sensed that something was wrong. This smell was too tempting. They didn't come back to their senses for a moment, but were roused by Dugu Xiong's words. Ignoring June Moxie, they all moved their nostrils to search for the smell. Their 7 pairs of nostrils madly inhaled, turning the surroundings into a vacuum. June Moxie inexplicably felt a little suffocating. Insufficient oxygen supply. What kind of lung capacity is this? It smells too good. Why does it smell like wine? Dugu enclosed his eyes and moved his nose, his face full of confidence. Nonsense. How can there be such fragrant wine? I'm going to get drunk. Dugu Xiong was still looking up at the sky with an intoxicated expression. This is definitely not wine. It's a mortal wine. Dugu Hao looked like an expert, shaking his head as if he had drunk it before. F***ck off. What a mortal wine. How ignorant. Go to the side and stay there. Dugu Jie cursed. My uncle is your father. Why don't you tell him to go to the side and try? Dugu Hao's face and neck turned red as he retorted sarcastically. Could it be knockout incense? Dugu Cheng said it was knockout incense, but his nose was still madly sniffing. Even if it's knockout incense, I'd rather be drugged every day. Heavens, let me be drugged a little longer. What if I can't smell it anymore? Dugu Shang's face was full of intoxication. Among the 7 brothers, he was the one who sniffed the loudest. Useless. Dugu Qian despised the conduct of his 6 brothers. He cursed them with infinite contempt, but he himself closed his eyes in intoxication. The 7 of them were all shaking their heads, closing their eyes, and sniffing wildly. They didn't notice that less than 10 feet in front of them were extremely conspicuous large jars of wine. The glistening yellow wine inside was emitting an intoxicating fragrance, drilling into their nostrils. June Moxie was dumbfounded. There's actually such a person in this world, and there's 7 of them at once. Nature's creation is indeed wonderful. He couldn't help but cough. Startled by his voice, the seven brothers finally came to their senses. They opened their eyes with some embarrassment. Seeing June Moxie in front of them, they immediately remembered their mission. Just as they were about to step forward and grab this brat to hand in their mission, the seven of them suddenly stopped in their tracks. Their 14 eyeballs simultaneously stared. That thing was actually wine. How could wine be so clear and transparent? What kind of wine in this world could emit such an intoxicating fragrance? Big brother, look, is that really wine? Dugu Jia gulped down his saliva. It's so *king fragrant. Nonsense. If it's not wine, can it be vinegar? Does your family's vinegar smell so good? It's really good wine. Why haven't I seen such good wine before? Dugu Hao's saliva dripped on the floor, but he did not forget to mock them. Don't talk about seeing it. I've never even heard of it. I really want to taste. Dugu Chung used his sleeve to wipe his mouth. With two smacking sounds, his sleeve became wet. Nonsense. Who doesn't want to taste? The six brothers looked at him in disdain. June Moxie. Dugu Ing let out an earth-shattering roar. Immediately after, his voice became gentle. In your hand, what's that? It was hard to imagine that a fierce man like Zhang Fei could speak in such a gentle manner. Don't you understand? It's a wine cup. What else can it be? Jun Mo Xie swirled the wine in his glass and accidentally spilled some of the wine in the glass onto the ground. Suddenly, the aroma of the wine in the surrounding became at least twice as strong. The seven of them widened their eyes at the same time and lowered their heads in unison. Looking at the wet patch on the ground, their eyes were about to spit fire. It was a heinous sin to waste such a fine wine that they had never seen or heard of before. How could this be tolerated? Uncle can tolerate it, but I can't. Even we can't tolerate it. I know that's a wine cup. I'm asking you, what's in that wine cup? Duguing growled in a low voice. This is my home. I can put whatever I want in my wine cup. I can put vinegar in it, and I can even pour soy sauce in it. June Moxie did not even bat an eyelid. Instead, he simply crossed his legs and leisurely said, Of course, I can also pour wine. As he said the last two words, he raised the wine cup and took another sip. His mouth clicked twice, and as if awakened from a dream, his eyes widened. Right, what are you guys doing here? Hurry up and tell me. If there's nothing else, please leave. The eyes of the Dugu brothers hadn't left Jun Mo Xie's hand. They were still shaking the wine glass in his hand. Their hearts were jumping up and down. They were afraid that even a little bit of the wine would spill out. That would be such a waste of God's gift. We were ordered to capture you. Dugu Xiong replied casually. Before he could finish, Dugu Hao fiercely stomped on his foot, causing him to jump up and down in pain. We were ordered to invite young Master Jun to our residence for a chat, in order to deepen the friendship between the Jun and Dugu families. Dugu Hao strove to put on a refined appearance, shaking his head and emphasizing every word. As he shook his head, the saliva at the corner of his mouth flew in all directions, and Jun Moxie had no choice but to cover the mouth of the wine cup with his hand. Dugu Ing, who was at the side, suddenly became smart and understood with just a little bit. He opened his mouth and was about to speak, but was unable to speak due to the saliva in his mouth. He swallowed it with a gulp and then said, Yes, that's what my family's old man meant. The friendship between our two families is deep, and there's no distinction between us. Anything good can be shared. He. The other six nodded in unison, and their movements were orderly. 6 beautiful parabolas appeared at the corners of the mouths of the 6 fierce men. Aha, old Dugu is too polite. Jun Moxie's face was full of impatience, and he casually poured the wine in his cup with a schwa sound. The wine had not been diluted yet, and the after effects were extremely strong. Jun Mo Xie naturally didn't want to drink too much. In any case, it wasn't a rare thing. So, he happily stood up and said, If that's the case, then let's go. We don't want to keep Elder Dugu waiting. Fu *K. The 7 brothers saw that Jun Moxie had actually poured a large cup of the best quality wine and simultaneously opened their mouths in unison. What? Jun Moxie dragged out his voice. He. The 7 brothers laughed hollowly at the same time. Dugu Ing said with a drooling face, Young Master Jun, Our two families have a deep friendship, and we brothers have come together to invite you. This wine of yours, can we have a taste?" June Moxie's face was full of reluctance, and he shook his head like a rattled drum. No, I don't have much here. This is a never-before-seen top-quality wine, and only one drop is too strong. Even if one drop is not worth 1,000 gold, it's still a drop, and I still have to slowly enjoy it. Saying that, he casually pointed his finger and said in a regretful tone, "I only have these few jars. If I drink it all, there won't be any left." This time, it did not matter. The seven brothers' eyes followed the direction of his finger, and suddenly, their eyes could not move away. Chapter 112. The seven brothers followed June Moxie's finger and looked in the direction of his finger, and their eyes couldn't move away from that direction. Each of them cursed in their hearts. "You call this not a lot? There are 8 such big jars. There must be at least 50 kilograms in each. So there must be at least a few hundred kilograms in total. It's a pity that we can only smell it. We can't even taste a drop of it. A drop of it is worth 1,000 gold. Why don't you go and rob us?" "But this fragrance is worth 1,000 gold. Brothers, are we going to leave now?" "Ha! Didn't you say that you wanted to lead me to pay a visit to Elder Dugu?" June Moxie took a few steps forward and then turned his head to look. He saw that the 7 men were still in their original positions. Their backs were facing him, and they were looking at the big jars. Their feet were rooted to the ground, and they were motionless. Could it be that there's glue on the ground? There's definitely no glue on the ground. But the magic of the wine is even stronger. Oh, so that's how it is. Brothers, thank you for your silent reminder. June Moxie swayed as he walked back. He shouted in a deep voice, "Come." Several middle-aged female servants appeared at his side. "Young master, what are your orders?" "Young master is careless." "How can you be so careless? You sealed these jars of wine. If it weren't for Elder Brother Dugu's reminder, the smell of the wine would have disappeared. Then move them for me." June Moxie paused. The middle-aged female servants were dumbfounded. "Young master isn't muddle-headed, right? Didn't you tell us not to seal them? What's going on now?" The 7 men of the Dugu family were overjoyed when they heard this. They thought that June Moxie wanted to move them for their old master as a gift. So they couldn't help but scratch their ears and cheeks as they thought about how they would soon be able to eat heartily. Move it to my private warehouse. I'll hold a family banquet with the old master and the 3rd master when I come back tonight." June Moxie said sternly, "We also need to invite a few more guests. I'm afraid this wine isn't enough. Prepare some other wine as well. Don't neglect our guests." The maidservants bowed at the same time. Then one by one, they walked in front of the wine jars, covered the jars, and were about to seal them with mud. Wait! Dugu Ying's movements were incomparably fast. With a big stride, he leapt in front of the wine jars and opened his arms to embrace the world, directly blocking the maidservants outside and firmly protecting the wine jars behind him. His posture was like a towering mountain. Those who didn't know him would think that he was some kind of peerless master. The other 6 Ming Nan brothers seemed to have awoken from a dream and stood up at the same time. Immediately, 7 iron towers stood tall in front of the wine jug, ready to fight. So, this wine is for the June family's banquet tonight. Moreover, it might not even be enough. Doesn't this mean that there won't be any more of this wine after tonight? They didn't think that June Moxie's words were full of loopholes. One moment he said that he wanted to slowly drink it, and the next moment he said that he wanted to drink it all during the banquet. It was extremely contradictory. However, when they heard that the wine was about to run out, they all panicked. 7 brothers, what do you mean? June Moxie frowned and asked in bewilderment. My grandfather is still waiting for us tonight. Why don't we go quickly and return quickly? This sentence immediately dispelled the 7 men's thoughts of snatching the wine. So, Marshal June knows about this wine. The other 6 men immediately understood. Like 6 ferocious tigers coming out of the mountains, they instantly restrained June Moxie. Then, they pointed to the east and struck to the west and struck to the north. In an instant, the 4 maidservants were knocked to the ground. Dugu Ying kept shouting, Be gentle, don't hurt anyone. Dugu Qian rushed into the room like a gust of wind and came out empty-handed. Dugu Xiong hatefully scolded, "Pigs! You have to go to the kitchen to get bowls." Dugu Cheng and Dugu Xiong rushed out with a schwa sound. Not long after, they each carried a few large bowls and came back laughing. "Don't spill the wine." Dugu Ying's face was solemn as he warned, "Don't pour the wine from the same wine jar. As usual, drink a little from each jar. Don't drink too much. Quickly drink a few bowls to satisfy your craving. That's all. We'll carry June Moxie and leave quickly. Don't get drunk. Sixth brother, I'm talking to you. You're a glutton. Remember to drink less." It seemed that these men had been secretly drinking at home and were very experienced. Of course, the others were already impatient. They rushed to the wine jars like a swarm of bees to scoop up the wine. Then, one by one, they carefully carried the wine back. Squatting in front of the stone table, they formed a circle like a group of military workers. Duguing picked up the wine bowl and sniffed it with nostalgia. Then, he opened his mouth and took a big gulp. He only felt a cold thread flow down his throat. Then, a blazing flame rose from his stomach. In an instant, his entire body felt light as a feather, as if he was about to become an immortal. He loudly praised, "This is indeed good wine, of the highest quality. Those imperial wines that we drank in the past are simply trash. Later, we must find out from that June brat where this good wine is sold." The other 6 men moved in unison and drank a mouthful of wine at the same time. Then, they exhaled in unison. Their eyes were wide open as they raised their heads towards the sky. Then, they held their stomachs and shook their heads. Then, they moaned at the same time in comfort. Oh. The moans of these 7 very rough men sounded like dozens of professionals in a brothel receiving a guest at the same time. Then, they began to move at the same time. Their voices were extremely charming and gentle, converging into a torrent of moans. June Moxie, who was lying on the ground, shivered. He felt as if all the pores on his body were about to explode. It was as if he was walking through a mass grave in the middle of the night. Then, the 7 men rushed to scoop up the wine. From time to time, voices of dispute could be heard. "Boss, you have 2 bowls. I only have 1 bowl. 7th brother, get lost. Don't fight with me. It's really good. Why did you push me? Damn." 3rd brother actually quietly drank 3 bowls. "This guy is really shameless. Brothers, let's go, this is it." The 7 brothers did not expect that after they kicked open the door and barged in for such a long time, none of the guards of the Grand Marshal's house had come out to greet them. This was not normal at all. They actually drank wine so unscrupulously. Even June Moxie was a little dumbfounded. This was like a group of robbers breaking into their master's house and drinking wine calmly. Moreover, they were drinking until they were dead drunk. They did not care that the master had already called the police. Jun Wui, who had appeared silently, smiled and winked at June Moxie. Then, he disappeared without a sound. At the door, hundreds of June family's guards quietly dispersed. This was a standard strong wine. Moreover, it had not been blended yet. Even if it was converted to the alcohol content of his previous life, it would be at least 70 or 80%. It would not be an exaggeration to say that it was pure alcohol. A big bowl was at least half a caddy. June Moxie thought pitifully in his heart. June Moxie seemed to have been thrown to the ground with his Xian Qi restrained. None of the brothers paid attention to him, afraid that they would drink less than the others. Of course, this restriction was as good as nothing to June Moxie. At first, they were afraid that they would be discovered. Then, they simply sat up and stared blankly at the 7 brothers fighting. In the end, they simply stood up and stretched their limbs. Then, they crossed their arms and watched from the side. No one had the leisure to pay attention to him. Only for a moment. It was really only for a moment. Bang! Dugu Qian was the youngest. His alcohol tolerance was also the lowest. He was the first to break down. He was the first to fall to the ground. Then, he fell into a deep sleep. Dugu Hao was tripped by him. Dissatisfied, he flew up and kicked Dugu Qian far away. Then, he quickly went to scoop up the wine. Bang! Dugu Cheng staggered and fell on his way to scoop up the wine. Bang! Bang! Bang, bang, bang. The floor was in a mess. There was no other way. The alcohol's strength was too strong. Even a knockout drug would not take effect so quickly. Although there was a difference in alcohol tolerance, it was still dependent on the type of wine. These 7 brothers were basically drunk from one foot to the other. The liquor that Jun Dashao brewed this time was strong. Moreover, this was just the head of the liquor. It was even more alcoholic than alcohol. Although these 7 brothers had extraordinary alcohol tolerance, they had never drunk such a strong liquor before. It was like a waiter who was used to drinking beer from a young age suddenly drinking a cup of ergo too. At first, it was not much. He could even drink a few more bowls. However, once the alcohol kicked in, he would not be able to wake up from this drunken dream for a few days. Moreover, these 7 brothers of the Dugu family had drunk at least 3 or 4 large bowls. For a moment, Jun Moxie's small courtyard was filled with thunderous snores. Although he had successfully solved this problem, Jun Moxie was extremely frustrated. It was all because of these 7 brothers. If you want to sleep, then go to sleep. Why are you snoring? I can tolerate it. But there are a few people who not only snore but also grind their teeth, whistle, and even fart. It can be said that they are very rhythmic. Squeak. As Jun Moxie was vexed, Duguing on the ground had already started to whistle again. Jun Moxie kicked him on the buttocks. Hatefully, he scolded, "What are you shouting for?" The whistling stopped abruptly. Duguing was kicked over. Facing the sky, he muttered in the air, "Good wine." On top of the wall of the neighboring courtyard, Guanqing Han was hiding behind a flowering tree. She was dressed in a snow-white outfit. She was standing there with a pair of big, frosty eyes. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. She had received a notice from Ku Air warning her not to come, but she still came. Guanqing Han had been standing there with her sword since the Dugu family's 7 brothers had smashed open the door. If the Dugu family's 7 brothers were to hurt Jun Moxie or take away Jun Moxie, Guanqing Han would immediately act. Even if she knew that she was no match for them, she would still fight with all her might. Although this brat Jun Moxie was not pleasing to the eye, he was still the only successor of the Jun family's 3rd generation. Moreover, he was her brother-in-law. No matter what, she couldn't just sit by and watch him get hurt, especially since this brat had become more like a human recently. However, the next scene caused Guanqing Han's eyes to slowly widen, and she even felt a bit of admiration for him. From the very beginning, Jun Moxie's calm and unhurried attitude had surprised Guanqing Han a lot. In her memory, Jun Moxie would have been scared into a puddle of mud by now. It was not uncommon for him to be so scared that he would wet his pants. But today, it was completely different. Step by step, he had lured the Dugu family's 7 brothers into his trap. He had made them willingly jump in, as if they had taken advantage of him. Then, he had impatiently drunk himself into a drunken stupor. Although these 7 men were extremely crude, but such an outcome had left Guanqing Han extremely surprised. Is this still my debauchee and cowardly brother-in-law, Jun Moxie? Sighing faintly, Guanqing Han disappeared without a sound. Thank you for the first leader of this book. Thank you. Brother, you don't understand. Brother, Feng Ling really doesn't deserve your kindness and generosity. Thank you for your support. Haha, I'm going to say too much here. As for tipping and urging for updates, my brothers and sisters should act according to their capabilities. Take care of your own lives first, and don't make things difficult for yourself. If everyone is happy and healthy, then that's the best thing that can happen. Subscribing to this book is already a great support. As for the rewards, it was a token of appreciation from his brothers and sisters. Feng Ling was very grateful. Feng Ling considered himself a commoner. Of course, he liked money. He would never pretend to be virtuous and refuse anything. I won't deny this. But in my heart, my brothers and sisters' feelings and bodies are more important than this. I appreciate your kindness. I accept the rewards. But you must promise me to take care of yourselves first. Don't exceed your own capabilities. Otherwise, my heart will not be at ease. Having all of you is the biggest gain from this book. Thank you. Chapter 113. A sharp whistling sound came from the sky, and a ray of blue light flew down like a meteor and landed directly in June Moxie's courtyard. It was June Tian. Grandpa June was stunned the moment he returned. He had thought that even if his grandson had not been captured, he would at least have been tortured. Although his grandson had made great progress recently, he had not broken through to the 9th level. His defeat and capture were all within his expectations. He had prepared himself to go to Dugazongheng to get his grandson to vent his anger and take revenge when he saw that his grandson was not around. Who would have thought that he would see such a situation? Surprise? Surprise? Horror. Isn't this too dramatic? His grandson was sitting there safe and sound, while the 7 kids of the Dugu family were lying unconscious on the ground. Well, the old man had to admit that he was wrong. These 7 kids weren't unconscious, but they were drunk to death. Jun Tian rubbed his eyes. He still could not believe it and could not understand it. He was very curious as to how his grandson could achieve such a brilliant result. He was actually drinking wine with the people who came to capture him and even made them all drunk. Although Grandpa June knew that the wine his grandson brewed was very strong, he still felt that he had miscalculated when he saw the scene in front of him. Seeing that his grandson was fine, Grandpa June said a few words and slowly walked out with his hands behind his back. Well, I will not participate in this kind of matter. When Dugazongheng and Dugazongheng returned home, they heard that their 7 grandsons had already gone to find trouble with Jun Mo Xie in a fit of rage. Dugazongheng and Dugazongheng felt even more regret. Looking at Jun Tian's appearance, if these 7 grandsons had really gone too far this time, I'm afraid that the Dugu family and the Jun family will really have to fight to the death. Sigh. If only I had not been so impulsive and had talked to that old bastard Jun Tian first, or the father and son pair stared at each other, feeling as if they were sitting on pins and needles. In terms of strength, the Dugu family naturally didn't fear the Jun family. However, if the 2 families were to really go to war, then no one would be able to bear the consequences. Moreover, Jun Tian didn't have much hope at the moment. So, he didn't even have a way out. So, he had to drag someone down with him, even if he had to die. And if the 2 families were to go to war, then it wouldn't just be the Dugu family that would have to be the Jun family scapegoat. In fact, even the entire Tianxiang Empire would have to be the Jun family scapegoat. Things were getting serious. Dugu Zongheng paced back and forth in the main hall, restless and restless. Great General Dugu Wudi, who was watching from the side, felt dizzy but did not dare to make sound. Seeing that the sun was setting in the west, the father and son pair finally felt that something was wrong. Why hadn't they returned yet? Don't tell me that those kids didn't hold back when they caught Jun Mo Xie and crippled him. Then, he bumped into the returning old man June. In a fit of rage, my goodness. Jun Tian wouldn't be so ungentlemanly, right? The father and son pair seemed to have a tacit understanding and thought of this possibility. They looked at each other and saw the deep astonishment in each other's eyes. At this moment, a guard ran over, reporting to the Lord, the Jun family's young master, Jun Moxie, has sent someone to deliver something. Bring it up. Dugu Zongheng had a faint feeling that something was wrong. But since it was something that Jun Moxie had sent, it meant that the kid was probably fine. Feeling slightly relieved, he turned around and sat down on the armchair. Jun Moxie had only sent a small bundle. Dugu Zongheng held it in his hand and squeezed it. His complexion changed as he turned it upside down, and a few things fell on the table with a few crashing sounds. Trash. A bunch of trash. Dugu Zongheng furiously jumped up and kicked Great General Dugu Wudi twice. Look at what you've raised. Dugu Zongheng's fingers trembled. Look, 7 against 1. And they were all captured alive. Even the family's jade pendant was sent back. How shameful. How shameful. Suddenly caught in the crossfire, Dugu Wudi clutched his buttocks and screamed in pain. What do you mean by what I've raised? Don't tell me that those 7 weren't raised by you. The jade pendants that Jun Mo Xie had brought back were worn by the 7 Dugu brothers. Only the direct descendants of the Dugu family would be able to wear them. It was a symbol of their status. There was also a small note inside. The 7 Dugu brothers are guests at the Jun family's residence. We've been getting along very well, and they'll be back in 2 or 3 months. Don't worry, Great General Dugu. Guests? Return in 2 or 3 months. Don't worry. Dugu Zongheng was so angry that his nose was crooked. Woody, you go immediately and bring these 7 good-for-nothings back to me. I want to skin them one by one. Dugu Woody felt as if he had been pardoned and shot out like an arrow. Immediately after, he heard the sound of galloping in the courtyard, and the sound of horses' hooves rang out like a torrential downpour. Great General Dugu Woody had brought 100 of his personal guards to the Jun family's residence, and had requested an audience in a very formal manner. His 7 nephews could have recklessly barged in without any scruples. That was just a youthful act of foolishness, and it could also be considered the prerogative of youths to act carelessly. But Dugu Woody had personally come and could not be so rash. Even if he was rude and unreasonable, he was still one of the few great generals of the Tianxiang Empire. A servant took out the great general's name card and handed it over, saying that he wished to see Old Master Junjian Tian. The gatekeeper politely accepted it and replied that the old master was not present and had just gone out to visit a friend. Dugu Woody immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation. You obviously just came back from a fight with this old man, and I came right after. Even if I don't say that I came first, it's more or less the same, and now you're saying that you went out to visit a friend? If you hadn't captured my son and nephew and gained the upper hand, would you have been able to relax so easily? Who are you trying to fool? Of course, thinking was just thinking. People under the eaves had no choice but to lower their heads. So he went on to request an audience with Jun Wui. Third Master Jun, your son's legs aren't very nimble. He wouldn't have gone to visit a friend, would he? The gatekeeper had yet to go in to deliver the message when he heard a smiling voice. So, it really is Brother Dugu who has graced us with his presence. Wu is truly overjoyed, ah. How could you be so tactless? What is there to report? Why are you not lining up to welcome us? Dugu Woody looked over and saw a wheelchair slowly coming out of the inner courtyard. Jun Wui was dressed in a green robe and was sitting peacefully on it, looking at Dugu Woody with a calm smile on his face. The Jun Wui in front of him was no different from before, but Dugu Woody's senses, tempered by his experience in the battlefield, instinctively felt that something was wrong. Calm. Yes, too calm. It was just that it was too quiet, so quiet that it caused fear and dread. One awe-inspiring aura. In addition, under Jun Wui's sharp eyebrows and gentle eyes, Dugu Woody could clearly feel a proud and aloof sword pointing towards the heavens. It was as if a peerless divine weapon that had been covered in dust for many years was about to be unsheathed, its edge reappearing, and the roars of dragons and tigers resounding throughout the world. At this moment, Dugu Woody suddenly had an illusion that the person in front of him was not the crippled Jun Wui for 10 years, but the general in white from back then. The one who had once laughed arrogantly under the heavens. The one who had commanded the entire Xian continent, the soul of the army. Jun Wuhui? Jun Moxie's father, the iron-fisted general who had emerged victorious in every battle. The invincible god of war. In that instant, Dugu Woody felt an indescribable sense of respect. Jun Wuhui. That was the person Dugu Woody respected the most in his life. The person he looked up to, and also Dugu Woody's biggest goal in this life. Dugu Woody used to be a general under Jun Wuhui's tent. Even now, he would still recall those extraordinary years when he was in the army every night. Woody, when I return victorious, you and I will join hands and defeat Tang Shenxi. Ha ha! These were the words Dugu Woody had said before Jun Wuhui left for battle. Dugu Woody had gone to make a grand farewell, and Jun Wuhui had patted Dugu Woody's shoulder. This was also the last time the two brothers, Wuhui and Woody, would meet each other in this lifetime. These were the words Dugu Woody would repeat every time he got drunk for more than 10 years. Big. Dugu Woody excitedly took 2 steps forward. He was about to call out Big Brother when he suddenly woke up from his daze. The person in front of him was clearly Jun Wui. Jun Wui, who was sitting in a wheelchair, Jun Wooey, who had been crippled for 10 years. At this moment, Dugu Woody was in a trance, and his tiger-like eyes became somewhat moist. Brother Dugu? Jun Wooey looked at him indifferently. He looked at this old comrade and brother who had fought side by side with him. There was not the slightest emotion in his sharp eyes. It was as calm as water, as cold as water, and as awe-inspiring as water. Although the Jun family was still one of the big families in Tianxiang after the death of the two heroes of the Jun family, it was no longer the same as before. The Dugu family suddenly rose at this time and took away half of the military power from the Jun family in one fell swoop. Although it was clear that this was the emperor's way of balancing the situation, and it had nothing to do with anyone, Jun Wooey still felt aggrieved in his heart. He felt aggrieved for the Jun family, aggrieved for his father, and even more aggrieved for his late brother, Wu Huey. He even felt that Dugu Woody was unworthy of his big brother's care and promotion. After so many years of being crippled, Jun Wooey's heart was already brewing like a volcano. Therefore, he did not show the slightest bit of politeness towards Dugu Woody, this old comrade and good friend of his. Few people in the capital were not afraid of this great General Dugu Woody, except for the elders of the various families. But Jun Wooey was not afraid. Not only was he not afraid, but he also ridiculed Dugu Woody every time they met. Dugu Woody was left speechless every time, unable to face him. Third brother, your foolish brother is here to greet you. You've been feeling better recently, right? Ha 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 ha. Dugu Woody was only afraid of a few people in Tianxiang City. But this Jun Wooey was undoubtedly one of the people he wanted to avoid the most. If it weren't for the fact that this matter had happened so suddenly, he would not have been willing to face this old friend of his. Great General Dugu forced himself to calm down and squeezed out a smile on his face. I heard that our 7 little bastards are ignorant and have caused a lot of trouble in the residence. So, they were forced to stay as guests. This foolish brother has come to take them back and teach them a good lesson. I must ask them how they got the guts to cause trouble in the Jun family, and whose backing they are relying on. Even the third Master Jun, who was usually calm, almost laughed out loud. Who's backing? You really have the nerve to say that. Chapter 114. The guard replied solemnly, Yes, the 7 Dugu young masters have indeed come to look for the third young master. As for the other details, this subordinate does not know. This guard was once a subordinate of Jun Wooey, so how could he not understand the meaning behind his words? So that's how it is. This matter is most likely a joke between the younger generation. So what does it have to do with me? Jun Wooey looked at Dugu Woody indifferently and leisurely asked, Brother Dugu, this matter of the younger generation is really an injustice for Brother Dugu to personally come here. Ha! You really have a deep affection for your children, ah. Dugu Woody's hairy face suddenly turned red as he stammered, I don't care about the lives of those brats. It's only because the old master was worried and asked me to come and see. If those 7 brats are not sensible and actually cause trouble for the Jun family, then wouldn't that be terrible? Yes, ha, it would be terrible. Jun Wooey smiled faintly and said, But as the elders of the Jun family, we don't care about these matters between the younger generation. If Brother Dugu wants to look for them, then it's better to speak directly to my nephew, Emosia. My body has always been feeling unwell, and I only spoke a few words, and now I'm feeling unwell. I'm sorry, ah. Dugu Woody's face turned purple as he stammered for a long time, but was unable to speak. You want me to speak directly to Jun Moxie? What is this? What is my identity? What is his identity? No matter what, I'm still an elder ah. But Third Master Jun's body is not well, and everyone knows that he has already spoken with me. This is already giving me face, and if I continue to insist, then I'll be really embarrassed. Come, quickly lead General Dugu to the young master's courtyard. Jun Wooey smiled and cupped his fists. Brother Dugu, please go ahead. I think you're not unfamiliar with the Jun family. This little brother is a little tired, so I'll go back first. Go ahead, third brother. Take care. Dugu Woody forced a smile as he felt uncomfortable all over. Although the Duga family had never done anything wrong to the Jun family, but they had still been brought up by His Majesty to oppose the Jun family. Moreover, the Duga family had just been mysteriously killed in battle. So, it was no wonder that Jun Wui was prejudiced against them. Duga Wudi had been trying to resolve this misunderstanding all these years. He had a clear conscience, but he had always felt that he was inexplicably inferior to Jun Wui every time he faced him. In his honest heart, not having accompanied Jun Wu Hui through life and death that year was already a big mistake. In the end, his family still. Although the Dugu family secretly wanted to protect the Jun family, but Jun Moxie, this kind of brat, wouldn't be beaten up 10 times. Take it as teaching Jun Wu Hui's son a lesson. With a sigh, Dugu Wudi walked into the Jun residence. The imposing manner he had when he came out of the house had already disappeared. He knew that Jun Wui was warning him that it was best to let the younger generation deal with their own matters. As an elder, it was inappropriate for him to rashly intervene. Dugu Wudi wanted to roar. I also don't want to intervene, but he didn't know why. But when he saw Jun Wui's indifferent face and that similar charm, the more he looked at him, the more he looked like his most respected big brother. Unexpectedly, he didn't feel offended at all. From afar, he saw Jun Moxie standing at the door. Great General Dugu's imposing manner couldn't help but recover a bit. I didn't dare to do anything when I saw that your third uncle was in the wrong. But you took liberties with my daughter, so how can I not be in the wrong? Just wait and see how I'll deal with you. The little courtyard behind that brat. How come it doesn't even have a courtyard gate? Gate? The door had naturally been smashed by Dugu Ing and his brothers. Young Master Jun was very polite as he bowed from afar. So, it is Uncle Dugu who has graced this little nephew with his presence. Your presence brings light to this little nephew's face. Haha, please come in. He waved his hand to let them in. Great General Dugu didn't stand on ceremony as he walked in with a straight face. Then he saw that the courtyard behind Jun Moxie was in a mess. Dugu Wudi sucked in a breath of air. How did it end up like this? Where are those 7 little bastards? I'll teach them a lesson. Dugu Wudi was furious. I've clearly instructed you to capture Jun Moxie and not to touch anything else in the Jun residence. How did you end up like this? What should I do? No matter what, those 7 bastards are in the wrong. His imposing manner inevitably dropped by 30%. The 7 Duga brothers saw that the wine in our residence was quite good, so they drank a bit more. Huh. Jun Mo Xie smiled, but his face didn't move. They have already gone to bed. Good wine? Drank a bit more? Haven't you drunk wine in several lifetimes? How did they get drunk and fall asleep? Bah, how did I raise these useless things? Dugu Wudi's face suddenly turned black. Take me there. He turned around and was about to leave when he suddenly turned his head and pointed a carrot-thick finger at Jun Moxie. Brat, I'm warning you. Don't provoke my daughter again. For the sake of your father and third uncle, I'll let you go this time. But if there's a next time, I'll tear you to pieces and feed them to the dogs. Jun Moxie smiled as he looked at him. His eyes flashed as he slowly stretched out his hand and pushed the finger away. Then he pointed at Dugu Wudi. Old brat, I don't care if you're a famous troublemaker or not, but don't act shamelessly in the Jun residence. This young master won't fall for it. I'll also warn you, don't let your daughter pester me in the future. This time, I'll let it go for the sake of our friendship. But if there's a next time, this young master will make you my son's grandfather. Dugu Wudi's vision darkened, and he almost fell to the ground. It wasn't that he didn't know his nickname of troublemaker, but this guy was definitely the first in the court who dared to say it to his face. How could he not be angry? He opened his large hand and was about to hit him. Jun Moxie didn't dodge. Instead, he straightened his back and raised his face. Humph! Dugu Wudi didn't hit him in the end. No matter what, this was Brother Wu Hui's son. It was fine if his own son and nephew beat him up, but it would be a bit inappropriate. Suppressing her anger, she followed Jun Mo Xie to the door of the room. She could hear the sound of snoring coming from inside. It was rhythmic and rhythmic. He couldn't help but be enraged. He kicked the door open and roared, "All of you, get out of here!" The snoring continued. A strong aroma of wine rushed out of the room. Dugawudi couldn't help but twitch his nose. What wine is this? Why is it so fragrant? Only then did he come to his senses. His son and nephew were still sleeping. General Dugu's heart was filled with anger. He flew in, only to hear bang, 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 sounds like he was hitting a sandbag. He was punched and kicked. The snoring continued. Dugawudi was dumbfounded. June Dashao snickered. Do you think this young master's wine is ordinary? At this critical juncture, they won't wake up even if you beat them to death. They've drunk so much high-grade wine. If they don't have the right method, they might even die from drinking. The best part is yet to come. Men, carry these 7 bastards out. Dugawudi felt that he had lost all his face today. He had lost his entire life today. But he didn't know that this so-called losing face was just the beginning. Wait, June Moxie sneered. How can the great general come and go as he pleases? What kind of place does your Dugu family think our June family is? What else do you want? Dugawudi turned around fiercely. He was about to lose control of his temper. I've already forgiven you for seducing my precious daughter, but you still dare to nitpick? You don't want to live anymore. As the saying goes, killing is just a matter of nodding your head to the ground. The 7 young masters of the Dugu family arrived at the June family's residence and broke 2 red sandalwood doors. That 1,000 taels of silver. You injured 3 maidservants, 500 taels of silver for their medical expenses. You broke my courtyard's doors, 300 taels of silver. June Moxie raised his fingers and calculated each and every one of them. You even restrained me by force and drank my top-grade wine without my permission. Since we are old friends, I'll give you a discount. As long as you give me 25 million taels of silver, the great general can take the 7 Dugu young masters away. What? Dugawudi roared, shaking the bodyguards behind him so much that they staggered back. 25 million taels? That's right. Even if it's 25 million taels of silver, I'll eliminate the small change. June Moxie's expression did not change. He looked very magnanimous. I'll spit on your face. 25 million taels of silver. I want to know how these brats managed to drink 25 million taels of wine. If you can't explain yourself, I'll find Grandpa June and ask him where the June family inherited this extortion trick. Dugawudi was so angry that he started laughing. June Moxie remained unmoved. Lingling smiled. If it was just an ordinary wine, even if the 7 Dugu young masters drank themselves to death, they still wouldn't be able to drink it at such a price. But this wine of mine is unique in this world. Moreover, the young masters drank the head of the wine. A large jar of the head of the wine weighs 50 jin. Every jin of wine can be divided into 50 small cups, and every cup can be blended into a jar of top-grade wine. And this jar of wine is sold for 10,000 taels of silver. So the total is 25 million taels of silver. As for the other losses I mentioned earlier, I'll let you off the hook so as to avoid harming the friendship between our 2 families. Moreover, the price of a cup of wine is 10,000 taels of silver. It's definitely a fair price. June Moxie's face was serious. No one could tell that he was joking. I'll screw your 3rd uncle. Dugawudi cursed. You think you can become an immortal just by drinking this broken wine? General Dugu was so angry that he was about to explode. The entire Tianxiang Empire's annual military expenditure was only 30 million silver taels, and his 3 sons and 4 nephews had spent almost the entire empire's annual military expenditure on a single drink? Wasn't this clearly extortion? Fair trade, good quality, and cheap. Great General, please be careful with your words. Do not involve my 3rd uncle. As the saying goes, the rarer something is, the greater its value. This wine is unique to me in this world. If I say 10,000 taels of silver for a cup, then it means 10,000 taels of silver for a cup. If it were someone else, I wouldn't be willing to sell it for 10,000 taels of silver. June Moxie snorted twice and placed the 2 cups on the table. He picked up a jar of wine from the side and poured a cup. Then, he scooped a cup of wine from the jar and placed it on the table. He gestured for them to taste it. Chapter 115. Today's third update has arrived. My apologies, I was too tired and overslept. Dugu sat down angrily, grabbed a cup, tilted his head back, and gulped it down. Suddenly, his tiger-like eyes opened wide, and he couldn't help but praise, "Good wine. It's really good wine. I've never seen or heard of it before. This is a blended wine." June Moxie smiled like a fox. "Dare I ask, great general, is it not worth 10,000 taels of silver for a jar?" Dugu smacked his lips and blurted out, "It's worth it. It's two." He immediately glared at him. "It's not worth it. It's not worth it. You're selling a jar of wine for 10,000 taels of silver? Why don't you just rob a bank? 10,000 taels of silver is 10,000 taels of silver. It's a fixed price. It's up to you whether you want to buy it or not. I can't do anything if the great general goes against his conscience and lies." June Moxie rolled his eyes. He pushed the cup of wine over and said, "This is the wine's head. Great General Dugu, would you like to try the 10,000 taels of wine for a cup? This cup is a gift from your nephew to the elders." Dugu snorted twice. He wanted to say no, but he couldn't resist the temptation. He grinned and said, "The wine is indeed good, but no matter how much I taste it, I can't go for 10,000 taels of silver for a cup." He curled his lips, grabbed the cup, and quickly poured the wine into his mouth. Oh, an ice-cold thread slid down his throat, and a bang sound was heard as a volcano erupted in his heart. Invincible Dugu felt as if his entire body's blood was on fire. He felt a little dizzy after drinking the cup. He tried his best to restrain himself, but his eyes had already turned bloodshot. "Good wine. It's worthy of being called a wine's head." Dugu raised his head and swung the cup in his mouth. Then he slammed it down on the table. "Another cup. 10,000 taels of silver for a cup. No bargaining." June Moxie snorted. "General Dugu, you drank 10,000 taels of silver in one go. You actually wanted another cup? You even said that this heavenly wine isn't worth the price. Previously, this cup was a gift. If you want to drink more, I can't afford it. This wine is really good wine, but no matter what, it can't be worth 10,000 taels of silver a cup, right?" Dugu eyes greedily looked at the wine jug in the room. He wanted to snatch it away, but he refused to admit it. What a joke. This was a matter of principle. The Dugu family would go bankrupt on the spot if he accepted this 10,000 taels of silver for a cup. Does great General Dugu intend to renege on this debt? June sneered and said, "Or is it that the Dugu family broke into my June family's residence, smashed everything, humiliated me, and then robbed my family of the only heaven's wine in the world? And now, all of this is over with just a few words? Just let it go. My June family doesn't even have this much face. Do you think you can just let your Dugu family bully us like this? That's what you said." "I didn't say that." Dugu jumped up. This crime was too big. Even General Dugu couldn't bear it. "Since you didn't say that, does that mean that General Dugu believes that the Dugu family needs to compensate our June family for this?" June Moxie said patiently, "Of course we need to compensate. Although are the Dugu family. That's great. Thank you for your kindness. 25 million taels of silver." June Moxie interrupted him with a beaming smile. "Crap, bastard." Dugu was dumbstruck. He spun around 3 times and scratched his head. After a long time, he finally said, "You didn't even sell this wine. How do you know that it's worth 10,000 taels of silver? Isn't this taking advantage of my family? Do you think that I have to approve of your wine just because you set a sky-high price? That's not reasonable. According to General Dugu, you want me to sell this wine for a certain amount. Then you'll agree to it?" June Moxie asked. "That's right. No, that's not it. What I'm saying is that if you can mix the same jar of wine into fine wine and sell it for a price that everyone agrees with, then my Dugu family will accept this debt." Dugu smiled proudly. "I've finally found a way to deal with this brat. Your wine is indeed of the highest quality, but it can only be sold for 180 taels of silver. Although it's not a small amount, it can't be sold for 25 million taels of silver. Good, it's a deal. But before that, your Dugu family is not allowed to cause trouble for me. June Moxie immediately decided, "Good, but it must be within 3 months. During this time, if you provoke my daughter, I will still beat you up." Dugu Woody snorted twice. He looked at the greasy-haired brat in front of him and felt that his evil plan had succeeded. "If you can't sell the wine for 25 million taels of silver, then you will supply my Dugu family's wine for free. How about it? Do you dare to accept this bet?" After going around in circles for a long time, General Dugu finally revealed his true intentions. "I have full confidence in my wine, so it's a deal. But you must also keep an eye on your daughter. If she comes looking for me, I will not be responsible for what happens." June Moxie snorted twice in his heart. "Your Dugu family can just wait to carry this mountain of debt. I'll let you be arrogant. Don't say 10,000 taels of silver for a jar. Even if it's more, it's still going to be him crying." June Mo. Xie sent a carriage. Dugu Woody gave the order, and his subordinates picked up the 7 brothers. They looked like dead pigs and threw them into the carriage. Then General Dugu walked away, looking back 3 times at every step. He really could not bear to part with that heavenly wine. "This brat is too stingy. Why didn't he give me another cup just now?" June Moxie watched him leave and returned to his room with a smile. However, he did not take this matter to heart. He stroked his chin and pondered. "The current June family is still too weak. Although I used medicine to raise third Uncle Xian Qi to the Tian Xian level, but he is still only at the primary level of Tian Xian. I reckon that my current strength is still not as good as the magnificent Jewel Hall. Perhaps I should also raise grandfather's strength. Don't I have that level 9 Xiandan in my hands? I can make the best use of it. If I make good use of it, I should be able to raise grandfather's strength to the intermediate level of Great Master Shen Xian. But how should I use that thing? I don't know anything about it. How should I solve this problem?" June Moxie's heart was having a headache for a long time. He had wanted to release this news countless times to attract strong people from all over the continent, but he had never been able to make up his mind. The weight of a level 9 Xiandan was definitely enough. He believed that even a master like Great Master Shen Xian would be tempted. Or it should be said that as long as one had enough power and strength, no one would not be tempted. But doing this was undoubtedly playing with fire, and the current June family could not afford to play with it. Even if the June family had 2 Tian Xian experts, they still could not afford to play with it. The truth was cruel. Although the Tian Xian experts were close to the peak of strength in this world, they were still powerless in the face of a higher-level existence. The territory of Tian Xiang Kingdom could not be said to be small, but in the entire continent, it was only 11. Even so, it could be said that there were many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Although there were not many strong people who had appeared, but June Moxie knew that there must be countless strong people hiding in the streets and mountains. Although the strength of his grandfather and third uncle were not weak, they were not enough to rely on. He believed that once the wind and clouds gathered, there would be a storm, and the level 9 Xiandan in his hands was the best catalyst. Whether it was an Earth Xian expert like Tian Xian or Great Master Shen Xian, no one would not want to get their hands on this thing. Once this news was spread, many strong people would gather and blood would be spilled everywhere. Not to mention the June family. Even the entire Tian Xiang Kingdom would be razed to the ground in a single night if they weren't careful. It wouldn't be impossible for them to do so. But if he did not attract these people, how would he be able to obtain the method and conditions to consume this top-quality Xiandan? How would the June family's overall strength increase? Could it be that he would have to sit on a mountain of treasure and return empty-handed? This would be very difficult. June Moxie frowned and thought for a long time. He could not make a decision. Should he play it safe, or should he take the risk? Suddenly looking up at the sky, he could not help but think of his previous life. He had traveled the entire world alone and had never feared anything. Why is it that in this world my hands and feet are tied? Thinking of this, a sudden burst of arrogance burst forth from his heart. He could not help but laugh and immediately made a decision. As the saying goes, how can you catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? Even if today's decision attracts a lot of Shen Xian, What do I have to fear? This is not a simple matter of Xianqi. The real test is one's wisdom. The evil monarch schemes. Who has he been afraid of? Even if Shun Xian is as numerous as the clouds, I have endless ways to deal with him. Jun Moxie made up his mind and finally smiled. He habitually rubbed his chin with his right hand. If his fellow disciples from his previous life were to see this expression on his face, they would immediately run as far away as they could. Because this means that the evil monarch has made an extremely bold, no, it should be said to be a very crazy decision. Moreover, this decision, regardless of the final outcome, will shock the world. Looking out the window, the sun was gradually setting. Little Cook quietly came in and reported, "Young master, the old master invites you over for dinner." Jun Moxie made no sound. "Grandfather, why are you so happy today? Could it be that something good has happened?" Jun Mo. Xie couldn't help but ask as he looked at Jun Zhan Tian's face that was filled with schadenfreude. "But I'm dying of laughter. That old bastard Li Shang, I don't know where he got his hands on a faux prescription. He said that the seabed jade coral can cure his damaged dantian and had his grandson buy it for a sky-high price of 5 million liangs. As a result, after preparing for a few days, he impatiently began to use the jade coral to practice and recover his strength. Guess what happened? Grandpa Jun laughed so hard that his eyes narrowed and his whole body twitched. What's wrong? Can't it work? You bought a piece of trash and it's not useful? Jun Moxie followed the old master's train of thought and asked. Right now, the old master needed a sidekick, but the third uncle did not hear it. Wahahaha! Grandpa Jun slapped the table with one hand and slapped his thigh with the other. He laughed so hard that tears almost flowed out. It's not a piece of trash. It's not that it can't be used. It's simply too good, too useful. Ha ha. In the end, this old man can't even breathe. I'm dying of laughter. Grandpa Jun drank a mouthful of water and choked for a while before saying, I heard that at the most critical moment, the jade coral unexpectedly exploded. It's really too good. Wahaha. Chapter 116. Jun Moxie was drinking a mouthful of wine when he heard those words. He choked and sprayed a drop of wine onto the third uncle, Jun Wui, causing him to cough even more violently. Wah! That old bastard Li Shang has overreached himself. Not only has his dantian recovered, but his meridians have also been greatly damaged. He's on the verge of death. Even his most beloved grandson, Li Yuran, has been affected. Grandpa Jun hadn't laughed so heartily for many years. I heard that the pretty boy's face was directly disfigured. Wahaha. Junimo Xie held the wine cup in his hand. He was flabbergasted. I originally only wanted to cause a little damage. In all honesty, at that time, I really did not expect such a glorious result. I only wanted to destroy the jade coral. I really had no other intentions. As for the Grand Preceptor Li Shang being seriously injured and Li Yuran being disfigured, I really did not think about it. I am very innocent, although I wanted to be a little worse at that time. I actually waved my hand casually to create such a good situation. The gods make fools of people. Just for this matter, today we must get drunk. Grandpa Jun laughed heartily and raised his glass of wine. And this matter is indeed frightening. But father, if the Grand Preceptor Li Shang is really unable to cure him and dies, we also need to be careful of the Li family's movements. Li Shang's blood god guards could be said to have shaken the world for a period of time. No one dare to look down on them, and they are incomparably loyal to Li Shang. If Li Shang really dies, these people will definitely vent their anger. But if they want to vent their anger, their first target will be our Jun family. We have to be on guard against this. So, we need to make some preparations in advance. Jun Wu smiled. He then calmed his mind and spoke slowly. That's right. Grandpa Jun put down his glass of wine. If that old man really dies, although the Li family will not be able to return to its former glory, the backlash from those men of sacrifice will also be a headache. Even if he didn't die, this would definitely be the reason for chaos. Wu Yi, most of the Jun family's strength is now in your hands. So, how do you think we should handle this matter? Jun Wui furrowed his brows and said, if we're talking about adapting to the situation, we still have to consider Grand Preceptor Li's final life and death as the prerequisite. If he survives this, all the arrangements will be wasted. The best countermeasure is to deal with the myriad of changes by not changing. Gathering the core strength together and not giving the opponent a chance to break us down one by one is the best strategy. I believe that our June family's strength can ensure their safety. I'm only worried about General Shun and the others. They've been following us all these years. So, it can be said that their hatred with the Leaf family isn't deep. So, if something were to happen to them, then they might encounter some misfortune. June Moxie smiled. Third uncle's words are certainly wise words, but you are worrying too much. Any one of these generals was an iron-blooded warrior who had survived hundreds of battles. His sensitivity to danger was definitely deeper than anyone else's. Otherwise, wouldn't they have already died in battle? As long as they receive this news, their first reaction will be to respond to it and ensure their own safety. If they can't even protect their own safety, then how can they go into battle and kill the enemy? June Moxie smiled as he said this. Then, he raised his eyebrows and said ruthlessly, if they don't even have this ability and we still need to send people to protect them when things come to a head, then what's the use of such trash? What's the point of abandoning them? What's the point of hurting them? June Jantian and June Wui were stunned at the same time. They looked at each other in dismay, not knowing how to react. These two men were commanders who had fought hundreds of battles in the army. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they loved their soldiers like their own children. They treated the soldiers under them like brothers and nephews. So, they naturally disapproved of June Moxie's incomparably ruthless words. Emosia, you can't say things like that. These people have followed our June family for many years. How can we abandon them? June Jantian was a little angry. He stroked his beard and said in a displeased manner, this is the basic integrity of a person. We share weal and woe, and never abandon each other in life or death. Your way of thinking is too. Grandpa June didn't finish his sentence, but the criticism in his words was very obvious. Grandpa, Emosia doesn't agree with your words. Let me ask you something. If you only care about these incompetent people and cause the death of countless soldiers, then you should understand the pros and cons of this matter, right? The border has been unstable these past few years, and there have been battles all year round. And those people that third uncle mentioned before are all veteran generals in the army. It's inevitable that they will lead their troops to face the enemy. And if a general is incompetent, then thousands of soldiers will die. For me, if a person is really incompetent, then it's better to simply give up. Otherwise, if they are entrusted with heavy responsibilities, then the overall situation is bound to be ruined. At certain critical moments, it might even shake the foundation of the country. How can this be a trivial matter? This is a matter of great right and wrong. How can it be that we are heartless? June Moxie boldly retorted, I just mentioned that if a general is incompetent, then thousands of soldiers will die from exhaustion and the position will be lost. If it's serious, then the enemy will break through and the entire army will be routed. Even the foundation of the country will be shaken, and the country will be destroyed. This is definitely not alarmist talk. Grandpa and third uncle also understand this truth. At critical moments, we must make a painful decision. Otherwise, we will have to pay an unbearable price. When that time comes, it will be too late for regrets. Use people who are virtuous. Use generals who are resourceful. This is not something that we should be emotional about. We must be responsible for the majority of the people. If as a leader, you still have to be emotional, then I can only say that you are unqualified. If Emosia's words have offended you in any way, then I ask Grandpa and third uncle to forgive me. However, this is a matter of principle. Please forgive Emosia for not being able to give in. Jun Jantian and Jun Wu remained silent at the same time. They were both intelligent people, and even though they felt that these words weren't very pleasant to hear, but they couldn't refute the fact that these words were true. As a qualified leader, being merciful and soft-hearted was the biggest taboo. Although they acknowledged that Jun Mosia's words were reasonable with their characters, they would never do something like that and would never do it. This was also why they were respectable. Although they were pedantic, they were adorable and admirable. Perhaps this was also the embodiment of human nature. June Moxie chuckled and said, "Naturally, this is still our conjecture. As for the final result, it is still a different matter. I just want to remind Grandpa and third uncle in advance. When the time comes to give up, you must be decisive. If you are indecisive, you will be in trouble." Third uncle taught us about the helplessness of the aristocratic families. Today's actions and the decision we make in the future are also the helplessness of the aristocratic families. June Jontion and June Wooey looked at each other. They were surprised and shocked by June Moxie's ruthlessness today. June Wooey frowned as he pondered. He could not help but think of June Moxie's fatal moves. His heart shivered. As the second generation of the June family, he undoubtedly understood his nephew's position. However, it was difficult for a soldier to give up his comrade in arms. It was just as June Moxie had said, helplessness. Grandpa June stroked his beard and narrowed his eyes as he thought to himself, "I can see through June Moxie's character. Although he is somewhat ruthless, he is someone who can wield power. However, he should not be too ambitious. Otherwise, the sky will be filled with blood. Is it a blessing? Is it a calamity?" Grandpa June was a little worried and could not help but sigh. The old man came from a poor background and was not a true descendant of an aristocratic family. It could be said that he had fought his way to where he was today, step by step. Therefore, he was very kind to the soldiers under him, especially those generals who had climbed up from the bottom. He valued them even more. However, Old Man June had 60 years of experience. He had undergone the baptism of political struggles. He was no longer the hot-blooded and courageous man of the past. Moreover, he had lost his son and grandson. Therefore, he had gained a deeper understanding of the ways of the world. Therefore, June Mocie's words were more acceptable to him than June Wuyi's. In fact, he even appreciated his only grandson's foresight. June Wooey turned his head and spoke to Old Pang. "Uncle Pang, I will have to trouble you to make arrangements for this matter. No matter what, safety is the most important." Although Old Pang was nominally the steward of the June residence and was considered a servant, but in reality, everyone knew that Old Pang and June Jontion were true friends of life and death. June Jontion had never treated Old Pang as a servant. He only treated him as his own brother. In the past, June Jontion had wanted to remove his old brother's status as a servant. Then, he would be rewarded with military merits. Then, he would be bestowed the title of a wife and son. However, Old Pang was sincere about his elder brother. He understood that once he removed his status as a servant, he would no longer be able to accompany his elder brother. Moreover, he would no longer be able to contribute to his elder brother. Therefore, he refused to remove his status as a steward. Therefore, June Wooey had always regarded Old Pang as his elder. Therefore, he was very respectful towards him. Old Pang smiled and nodded. Then he got up and walked out. June Mocie couldn't help but shake his head. Although the June family's people were heroic and upright, but they were too sentimental and righteous. Being sentimental and righteous was a great advantage. However, as an aristocratic family, it involved the politics of the kingdom. Blindly being sentimental and righteous was not appropriate. However, June Moxie did not expect his words to be immediately accepted by Old Man June and the third uncle. It was just a temporary reminder. In case of a critical moment, it might be of great use. With the character of this father and son, it would take at least 8 to 10 years of subtle influence to change them. Not to mention that June Dashao did not have the patience to do so. Even if he did not have that much time to waste. This kind of thing cannot be rushed. Let's take it slowly. Suddenly, a sonorous voice rang out. "Brother Wu Yi, it's been 10 years. How had you been?" The voice was powerful and reverberated in the clear sky under the setting sun. June Wu Yi's complexion changed, and his face turned white in an instant. His lips trembled slightly, and he almost jumped out of his wheelchair. Chapter 117. This person is definitely an enemy and not a friend. From June Wooey's performance at the moment, there must be a lot of stories behind this. However, Junwoo was in the middle of a full recovery. So, he had to suppress his anger no matter what. Otherwise, he would inevitably fall short of success. Tian looked at the expression on Junwoo's face and seemed to have understood something. He could not help but reveal a look of worry. It has indeed been many years since we last met. I did not know that a distinguished guest would come from afar. Please come in and have a chat. Junwoo sat motionless as he slowly spoke. His voice was deep and resounding with a hint of heartfelt calmness. At this moment, Third Master Jun had already calmed his mind. His handsome face became like an ancient well without any ripples. His eyes suddenly became unfathomable. He turned to Tian and said, "Father, they are here. You do not need to come out personally. This child will deal with everything on his own." Tian nodded slowly with a heavy expression. Moxie smiled and stood up. He gently stopped the person who was pushing the wheelchair behind Junwoo and said, "I will accompany the third uncle." He pushed the wheelchair and slowly walked out of the dining hall. Ling smiled inwardly. The magnificent Jewel Hall and the Jun family really have a grudge. In the courtyard, two middle-aged men dressed in white stood side by side. They were equally handsome and had the same elegant demeanor. But from Moxie's point of view, although the two men were standing side by side, their positions were almost the same. Even their postures were almost the same. Only the left hand and the right hand that were close to each other were obviously a little too relaxed. The other two men's eyes were filled with vigilance. So Moxie immediately determined that the two men seemed to be harmonious, but in fact, they were guarding against each other. Although they came from the same school, they were not on good terms with each other. They even had killing intent. No wonder that day, at the magnificent Jewel Hall, the reaction to his bid was so strange. It seems that at that time, the problem was between these two men. "Brother Mu, after so many years, you are still as elegant as ever." Junwoo's face flashed with a touch of joy, but more than that, he was nostalgic and sad. He smiled faintly at one of them, but didn't pay any attention to the other. The white-robed man took a step forward and carefully examined Junwoo's face. Then, he spoke up in a somewhat emotional manner. "Woo-ee, you're the same as you were back then. I believe that if the young lady knew, she would." He suddenly stopped and smiled apologetically. "Woo-ee, these 10 years, how have you been? Your Xian-Chi has advanced to the Earth Xian? It's really commendable." In fact, considering Junwoo's age, it was indeed commendable for him to have advanced to the Earth Xian level. Not to mention that Junwoo had been disabled for 10 years, but his Xian-Chi had advanced instead of regressing. Naturally, it was even more rare. However, no matter how rare Junwoo was, he was still disabled. This fact could not be changed, at least in the eyes of Brother Mu. When he heard the word "young lady," Junwoo's calm face showed a trace of sadness. The muscles on his face also showed a painful spasm, and it took a long time for him to calm down. The other man in white also suddenly had a strange look on his face. He looked at Junwoo's eyes, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. "Junwoo, although your lower body is disabled and you have become a waste, but it seems that you are quite open-minded. It's not bad to have such a state of mind." The other white-robed man laughed out loud and spoke sarcastically and sarcastically. His words were extremely unpleasant to hear, and his attitude was completely different from the previous white-robed man. It seemed as if he and Junwoo had an irreconcilable enmity. "Your Excellency has really hit the nail on the head. It doesn't matter if my third uncle's legs are disabled, but if his head is disabled like your Excellency's, then there is really no cure." Before Junwoo could speak, Moxie, who was standing behind him, had already opened his mouth. His tone was light and seemed to have no weight, but his words made the man in white so angry that his face turned even whiter than the white clothes on his body. "Moxie, ignorant child, I let you go the other day, but you don't even think about it. Today, you're showing off your sharp tongue in front of me. Do you really think that I don't dare to kill you?" That white-robed man looked at Moxie in an awe-inspiring manner. The muscles at the corners of his eyes twitched, and his handsome face instantly became somewhat sinister and terrifying. "Oh, Your Excellency, this is the June family's courtyard, not the magnificent jewel hall. You dare to be so arrogant and domineering in the June family's courtyard and speak to the young master of the June family like that? Do you really think that this young master doesn't dare to kill you? Do you believe that this young master won't give an order to chop you into meat paste in an instant?" June Moxie looked at him leisurely, and his eyes instantly sharpened. "Ha ha ha!" The man in white looked up to the sky and laughed. After laughing, he turned to Jun Wooey and said, "Jun Wooey, this nephew of yours really makes me appreciate him. He actually said that he wants to kill me. Ha ha ha. Jun Wooey, you tell him that the June family doesn't have the strength to do so, but do you have the guts to kill me? Ha ha ha. Really ignorant and ridiculous. Tianxiang's #1 ignorant debauchee is really not as good as seeing him in person. I admire him, but pity him. Xiao Han, this is the June family's residence, and you are too presumptuous and too much." Another man in white shouted angrily, "If you don't want to come here with me, then leave immediately. What nonsense are you spouting? Mu Shui Tong, you also said that this is the June family's residence, and here you don't have the qualifications to yell at me." The man in white called Xiao Han gloomily looked at Jun Wooey and said without turning his head, "Ha ha ha. This is really funny. There are too many people in this world who think too highly of themselves and think too highly of themselves." June Moxie laughed loudly. "Brother, don't think too highly of yourself. Touch your conscience and ask yourself, what kind of trash are you in your organization? Can you speak for the entire organization? Even if my June family were to kill you, do you think your master would go to war with my June family for your cheap life?" June Moxie looked at him with pity. "Poor child, let me tell you the truth. Even if all the people in this world die, the sun and the moon will still rise from Dongfang and set in the west. People don't think too highly of themselves. Once you neglect this point, you will definitely stumble, and it will be a big stumble. Let me tell you this in a sincere and heartfelt manner, and treat it as a free education for you. Haha, I am too kind." A shadow flashed, and a series of pa-pa-pa sounds rang out. The enraged man in white approached June Moxie and raised his palm to slap him. June Moxie laughed loudly and quickly retreated. The man in white followed him like a shadow. June Moxie's body swayed left and right, and his head tilted to the side. His shoulder was hit by a palm, but at the same time, he used his elbow and knee to block the attack. "Two poo-poo" sounds were heard, and the man in white's face turned green and white. He retreated a few steps, and his posture became very unnatural. His eyes turned red, and he looked at June Moxie as if he was about to spit fire. He was so angry that he wanted to swallow him whole. Although June Moxie's words were rude, he was still a junior in the eyes of the man in white. He could teach him a lesson, but he could not kill him. Therefore, the man in white only used 5% of his strength and was prepared to teach this sharp-tongued debauchee a lesson. Otherwise, as a dignified Tianxian expert, he would have to consider his own status. If he were to disregard his status and bicker with a junior who had not even reached Silver Xian, wouldn't he become a laughingstock? But he never expected that June Moxie's counterattack would be so sharp, so fast, so precise, and so ruthless. One elbow hit his throat, and the other knee hit his crotch. He had underestimated his enemy and was completely unprepared. This boy's attacks were tricky, and his timing was precise. It was incredible and just right. Even with his reaction, he had still been hit. This brat actually found his blind spot in an instant. If not for the fact that his Xianxi had reached the Sky Xian realm, these 2 blows alone would have been enough to kill him on the spot. He wouldn't have been able to die again. Even so, his throat was still burning, and his crotch was in unbearable pain. He had to use all of his willpower to resist the pain and not let out a groan. Xiao Han snorted angrily, and his entire body flashed with a pale blue radiance. He was desperate to cripple this hateful boy. Mu Shui Tong hastily moved sideways and angrily said, "Are you done yet? You're so fussy with a child. Don't you have any manners?" Jun Wui Lingling looked at Xiao Han. He had already decided that if Xiao Han dared to attack June Moxie, he he would expose his own strength, and regardless of the consequences, he would use all of his strength to kill him. Xiao Han panted a few times, and his voice was somewhat hoarse. It was obvious that Jun Moxie's 2 attacks had given him a big shock. He clenched his teeth and said, "Fine, I'll let this boy go for now." He then glared at Jun Moxie. "Boy, you'd better pray to the heavens that you don't fall into my hands." Jun Moxie smiled and said, "Don't worry. I'm praying to the heavens that you'll meet me when I'm able to kill you. Just you?" "Ha ha." Xiao Han was so angry that he started laughing. He heavily snorted and said, "Hopeless. Is that so? You just got hit in the crotch, and it doesn't hurt anymore." Jun Moxie Lingling said. Xiao Han opened his mouth, but no words came out. After all, Xiao Han was a Sky Shin expert, so he didn't want to speak against his conscience, especially in front of Jun Moxie, who was like an ant to him. He was very clear that he had not used his full strength. After all, Jun Moxie was only a silver Shin brat. In the eyes of a Tian Shin expert, he was no more than an ant. In fact, even a gold Shin or Yu Shin expert was no different from an ant in the eyes of a Tian Shin expert. But if he had been hit by someone with Yu Shin's cultivation, then his Shin Chi protection would not have been able to withstand it, and he would have died. As soon as he thought of this, his throat and lower body started to feel pain, and he couldn't help but feel a burst of fear. But besides the fear, his disgust and fear towards Jun Moxie had greatly increased. Jun Wui Lingling said, "Brother Xiao, did you come all the way here just to bicker with my nephew?" Xiao Han snorted, but didn't speak again. Mu Shui Tong smiled and said, "Wui, it's been 10 years, and it's finally my turn to come out. So, someone asked me to bring you a gift." Jun Wui's breathing quickened, and he said, "Is it her?" Chapter 118. "Yes, that's her." Mu Shui Tong nodded heavily. Then he reached into his bosom. He pulled out a small cloth bag. "What did she ask you to bring? Why didn't I know? Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Xiao Han suddenly became furious as he looked at Mu Shui Tong. He clenched his fists, and his eyes became bloodshot. "Tell me earlier. Who are you to me? What is your identity? What is her identity? Does she need to inform you of her actions? It's really ridiculous." Mu Shui Tong looked at him with disdain. "Give it to me." Xiao Han's body flashed as he rushed forward and reached out to grab it. Mu Shui Tong put the cloth bag into his bosom at lightning speed. Then, the two of them transformed into 2 groups of misty white shadows with a whoosh sound. The brilliance of the blue Shin Chi formed a faint circle around the 2 of them. Then the sound of punches and kicks was unceasingly transmitted from their bodies. Their strength was fluctuating, and the strong wind was cutting their faces. One amazing speed. Even though Jun Wui had reached the realm of Tian Shin, he could barely distinguish between the 2. This was not to say that Jun Wui's strength was far inferior to the 2. On the contrary, Jun Wui's 10 years of hard work and the 500 years of Blazing Heart Meridian's medicinal efficacies had allowed his Shin Chi cultivation to be higher than the 2. The reason why he was unable to see through their movements was because he had just entered the realm of Tian Shin and needed a relatively stable period. However, Jun Moxia's strength had already reached the level of these 2 men. So, his strength was far inferior to theirs. But his eyesight was still there. So, he could clearly tell who was stronger and who was weaker. He could tell that Xiao Han had also reached the Sky Shin realm, but his strength was far inferior to Mu Shui Tong's. In fact, Mu Shui Tong had misgivings about Xiao Han's strength and hadn't dared to use his killer move. Otherwise, Xiao Han would have been dead by now. Even so, bang, Xiao Han let out a mournful cry and flew out in a flash. He coughed in midair and spat out a mouthful of blood. He leaped up like a big bird and disappeared outside the door. His resentful voice came from afar. "Mu Shui Tong, I will remember what happened today, and I will definitely seek revenge in the future. Jun Wui, I will kill you." The dust dispersed, and Mu Shui Tong's clothes were as white as snow. He calmly stood in the middle of the field and looked at Jun Moxie with a strange look in his eyes. Then he suddenly laughed. "Wu-ee, this nephew of yours isn't simple at all. He was able to injure Xiao Han in a single strike and reduced at least 20% of his strength. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to win so easily. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I would have found it hard to believe that a brat who hasn't even reached Silver Xian could actually injure a genuine Tian Xian expert. Jun Moxie smiled faintly and said, I believe that any man who is injured in that place will lose more than 20% of his strength. I just happened to bump into him just now. With the gap in strength between him and me, this situation really shouldn't have happened. Those below level 9 are all non-entities, but what if the non-entities have poison in their bodies? Mu Shuetong smiled. That may be the case, but I was entangled with him for so long, and I didn't manage to bump into him in that place. The two of us have been fighting for almost 10 years, and we haven't bumped into each other even once. But you bumped into him on the first day of our meeting? Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Jun Moxie chuckled and said, That's because he never underestimates you. But he doesn't believe that an ant can hurt him. Mu Shuetong gave a deep look at him and solemnly said, Well, that's true. But I now know that an ant can also be very frightening. So, I won't underestimate you. Jun Moxie chuckled and spoke in a non-committal manner. This, senior, my third uncle has been waiting anxiously for you. Mu Shuetong laughed and took out the small cloth bag from his bosom and handed it over to Jun Wui. Jun Wuyi's entire body was trembling slightly, and his hands were tightly gripping the armrests of his wheelchair. Kacha! Sounds could be heard as cracks appeared on the top-quality rosewood wheelchair. After a long time, he slowly stretched out his hand and took the small cloth bag. It was as if he had received an item that weighed 1,000 pounds, and also as if he had received a priceless and fragile treasure. Mu Shuetong stared at Jun Wui and said in a low voice, The young lady has been waiting for you. Jun Wui suddenly raised his head. What? Could it be that she? Mu Shuetong deeply nodded. The young lady has resisted with her life until now. Jun Wui felt a burst of excitement, and his tiger-like eyes instantly became somewhat sparkling. His trembling hands slowly opened the small cloth bag. His movements were meticulous and cautious, as if he was afraid of messing up the rhythm. The small cloth bag slowly opened, and it turned out to be a handkerchief. And a wisp of black hair was quietly lying inside it. A few lines of words were embroidered in the other corner of the handkerchief. I haven't tied my hat for 10 years, and my long hair has been left behind for you. Every night, I look at Tian Xiang and never look back in this life. Jun Wui's whole body trembled like a fallen leaf in the wind. He trembled as he bent down and slowly pressed his face against the handkerchief. Then he slowly pressed his face against the bundle of black hair and didn't raise his head for a long time. Mu Shuetong heaved a long sigh and said, The young lady, she is trying to break through to the realm of Shun Xian. Jun Wui's whole body shook, but he still didn't raise his head. It seemed that this handkerchief and this wisp of black hair had become his entire world at this moment. His heart and soul were entrusted to him. Mu Shuetong stood quietly for a long time. Then he said, Brother Wu Yi, this little brother has come to an end. So I'll take my leave now. I hope that Brother Wu Yi can understand the young lady's feelings. Sooner or later, you'll have an end to your bitterness. Don't give up so easily. He cupped his hands in obeisance and then turned around to leave. Jun Wui still didn't raise his head. It wasn't until Mu Shuetong had walked a few feet away that he spoke in a hoarse voice. I've lost my composure. I'm too excited today, and it's not convenient for me to keep Brother Mu. But Brother Wu Yi will come to ask for forgiveness in the future. Brother Mu, please send my regards to Miss Xiao Qian. Xiao Qian was Mu Shuetong's former lover. Mu Shuetong paused, but didn't turn around. Instead, he smiled and said, Xiao Qian is now your sister-in-law. Next time, I'll bring her to see you. Jun Wui sincerely said, Congratulations. Mu Shuetong laughed out loud. Then a sky-blue light flashed, and his body floated along with the cool breeze. It seemed as if he was a falling leaf that was being carried by the cool breeze and disappeared without a trace. The curtain of night quietly fell, and the world became hazy. Jun Wui was sitting alone in his wheelchair. His face was still pressed against the handkerchief, and that strand of black hair was stuck to it. He was motionless, and his bleak shadow seemed to blend into the endless darkness of the night and slowly became indistinct. June Moxie stood quietly on one side and didn't make the slightest sound. The uncle and nephew pair, one sitting and one standing, were immersed in their own thoughts. The bright moon slowly rotated in the sky, and the stars twinkled in the sky. Jun Wui finally recovered from his immersion in the past. The 10 years of suffering and torment that had been accumulating in Jun Mo-Sie's heart for the past 10 years were finally revealed to Jun Mo-Sie. 12 years ago, the Jun family was like the sun in the sky and was at the peak of its glory. Grandpa Junjian Tian was invincible, and every country was terrified of him. No one dared to challenge him. Jun Wu Hui, the eldest of the 3 heroes of the Jun family, was known as the General in White. He was the #1 young man of the Tianxiang Empire. The second son, Jun Wu Meng, was outstanding in martial arts and superior in intelligence. He commanded an army, and every country was at his beck and call. The Jun family's momentum was not only in Tianxiang, but also in the entire Xianxian continent. At that time, Jun Wu was 19 years old. He was in the prime of his youth. He was young, handsome, talented, outstanding in martial arts. His temperament was extraordinary, and his demeanor was free and unrestrained. It was unknown how many daughters of rich families and government officials yearned for him. During one of the magnificent Jewel Hall's auctions, Jun Wui had nothing to do. He was a teenager, and on a whim, he went in a play and met a beautiful girl. The two talked happily and had a good impression of each other. After a few days, Jun Wui could not help but go again, and the two held hands and traveled around Tianxiang City. The free Jun Wui and the girl, Han Yin Yao, would leave Tianxiang City from time to time to travel around. As time passed, the feelings between the two grew deeper and deeper. Finally, what was bound to happen between a loving couple naturally happened. After a period of time, many mysterious people suddenly came to Tianxiang City, looking for Jun Wui. At that time, Jun Wui and Han Yin Yao were traveling outside, and these people did not even bother to greet them, and directly began to attack the Jun family. The Jun family was at the peak of their power, so they naturally did not fear them. Who would have thought that after a few battles, the Jun family would suffer a great loss? These mysterious people were all masters of the world, and none of the people who attacked were lower than Earth Xian level. Not to mention, there were more than 10 mysterious people who were watching without doing anything. When Jun Wui and Han Yin Yao returned, they were naturally shocked to see this scene. The girl, Han Yin Yao, explained to Jun Wui that she came from the most mysterious place in the world. Her family could be said to be an extremely powerful hidden family, or rather, the most mysterious organization. 3,000 miles of ice, Silver Blizzard City. Silver Blizzard City. Just the name of this place was enough to make the vast majority of the world's Xian experts tremble in fear. After thousands of years of accumulation, this was a concentration camp of powerful experts, and the magnificent Jewel Hall was one of the branches of the Silver Blizzard City in the mainland. The so-called Magnificent Jewel Hall was just a name for the outside world, and in the Silver Blizzard City, it was just leftover Jewel Hall. In other words, only the things that were eliminated from the Silver Blizzard City's research would be brought here to be auctioned, and all of these things would still be sold at sky-high prices. After the Magnificent Jewel Hall had converted these items into a huge amount of money, they would then use this money to exchange for some strange things and then return it to the Silver Blizzard City. Whether it was an ordinary old man's longevity technique or a cultivation technique that could stimulate the potential of the human body, or a rare and precious Xian beast core, or even something from extremely cold or extremely hot places, in short, as long as it was rare in the world, rare in the human world, and beyond the norm, the Magnificent Jewel Hall would buy it all at a satisfactory price. Han Yin Yao was the daughter of the current Silver Blizzard City's lord, Han Zhanming. Originally, even if Han Yin Yao had an extraordinary background it was not necessarily a bad thing. Even if Han Yin Yao was the daughter of the Silver Blizzard City's lord, and Jun Wui was also a direct descendant of the Jun family, and even if the Jun family was far from being comparable to the Silver Blizzard City, it could still be considered as one of the top families in the world. But the biggest problem was that Han Yin Yao had been engaged to the Silver Blizzard City's great elder, Xiao Huifeng's grandson, Xiao Han, since childhood. Chapter 119. Han Yin Yao had told Jun Wui, before she left, that if Jun Wui could reach the realm of Master Xin Xian, then there might be hope between the two of them. At that time, Jun Wui could be considered a genius, but he was only at the middle level of the Gold Xian realm. The gap between him and Master Shun Xian's realm was too far. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the gap was like the distance between heaven and earth. The Jun family of the Tianxiang Empire suffered a series of defeats in the following 2 years. Jun Wu Yi's two elder brothers, Jun Wu Hui and Jun Wu Meng, died in an inexplicable defeat. Jun Wu Yi was also ambushed during a campaign. He was obviously going to win, but he was defeated and was crippled for the rest of his life. Mu Shuetong was one of the few people who had accompanied Han Yin Yao. He was also the only person in the Silver Blizzard City apart from Han Yin Yao who found Jun Wui pleasing to the eye. The two of them called each other brothers. After becoming crippled, Jun Wui had lost all hope, and he knew that he and his beloved would never be together again. Time flies like an arrow, and 10 years have passed in the blink of an eye. They could only meet each other in the middle of the night, and he never expected that he would receive news from Han Yin Yao today. At this moment, Jun Wui's heart was like a raging sea. Jun Moxie listened quietly and didn't say a word. He knew that Jun Wui wasn't saying these words for him to hear, but he had been suppressing it in his heart for too long, and now that he had suddenly received news from his lover, he was excited and had a strong desire to speak. What he needed now was a way to vent his emotions, and he only needed an audience. And it didn't matter who this audience was, and whether or not they would be able to understand and listen to him. Even if a stone was placed in front of Jun Wui would still be able to say these words to that stone. After all, he had been repressed for far too long in the past 10 years. The night was as cold as water, and the white fog was like smoke. The dust-laden past events came out of Jun Wui's mouth in a soft whisper, but it felt like a heavy mountain was slowly pressing down on him. Time slowly passed as he spoke. The Jun family is no longer as glorious as it was in the past. Eldest brother and second brother died in battle in a bizarre manner. I suspected that the Silver Blizzard City's Xiao family was behind this. Therefore, I immediately launched an investigation. But at that time, my martial arts skills were low, and the Blizzard Silver City was extremely secretive, so I couldn't find anything. Finally, it was my turn to fight against the Yutang Empire. At that time, I had already gained an overwhelming advantage. I only needed one more step to achieve complete victory. But at that time, a few extremely powerful Xianqi cultivators appeared in the Yutang formation. They led the cavalry in a charge and instantly threw my formation into chaos. Then, several experts rushed into the middle of the army at the same time. They were all at the top cultivation level of Tianxian. He could still remember Chun Er Motzi shouting at the top of his lungs, "Third General, let's go, let's go." Then, I saw his dark red blood spurred out into the dark blue Xianqi. Then, Xiaoming, Duan Qilong, the little stutter, all of them died in front of me one by one. They were killed in front of me. Before they died, they looked at me. There was only one word in their eyes. Let's go. Xiaoming hugged someone before he died, but all the bones in his body were broken and smashed. He kept vomiting blood as he shouted for me to leave. At that moment, it was as if I was in a nightmare. Their blood splashed on my face. It was wet, fishy, and sticky. It was the blood of my brothers. Jun Wui lowered his head in pain. He frowned. When he was talking about the two sentences that Chan Er Motzi shouted, Jun Wui's voice became louder as if he was shouting. Then, he lowered his voice and murmured, When he was talking about the last sentence, he couldn't help but use his hand to rub his face forcefully. It was as if he wanted to erase the memory of his comrades' blood when they were trying to escape for him. But I was already crazy at that time. These people were my brothers. They grew up with me. We drank together, sang together, hunted together, went to war together, killed enemies together, celebrated together. In just a few short breaths, they all died in front of my eyes. They're all dead, right in front of me. That was my brother. My brothers. Not a single one of them. Junwoo suddenly let out a loud roar and fiercely raised his head. He tightly closed his eyes, and 2 large teardrops slowly trickled down from the corners of his eyes. For me. I wanted to risk my life. I wanted to kill them. Kill them all. Kill. Junwoo roared at the top of his lungs, but his voice soon became low and powerless. But my martial arts are too weak. They casually grabbed me, and then they poured some kind of medicine into my body, and then they dispersed the Xian Qi in my dantian, and then they sealed the meridians in my lower body. I didn't scream. I just stared at them without blinking. Although they were all masked, I would be able to recognize any one of them if they appeared in front of me again. I knew that they were from the Silver Blizzard City at that time. The people who came out of that damned place had a cold aura on their bodies. It was the smell of demons. I will always remember their laughter when they were torturing me. Hee hee. Junwoo's eyes turned red. Then, there's no then. I've been like this since then, and I can't stand up anymore. I've buried my hatred in my heart, and I don't dare to say it out loud. The Silver Blizzard City is too powerful, and if Father were to find out about it, he would certainly disregard everything to take revenge. But the June family, even if there were 100 of them, they still wouldn't be a match for the Silver Blizzard City. If I were to force it, I would have sacrificed more of my brothers. And the June family would have been annihilated as well. My elder brother died because of me, and I'm still alive and healthy. My brothers died because of me, and not a single one of them was left. But I'm still living in humiliation, and I'm still alive. Junwoo laughed bitterly. His face was full of tears. My 2 nephews died because of me, and I'm still alive. Emosia, do you think that the 3rd uncle is useless? Really cowardly? What a F***king piece of trash. Junwoo laughed bitterly. His chest was heaving up and down violently. His hatred was as deep as a mountain, and it was as deep as the sea, and it was as deep as a dam, and it was as deep as a river. Jun Moxie had been listening quietly. His face was calm and collected. After hearing Junwoo's question, he pondered for a moment. Then, he slowly opened his mouth. It would have been easy to die in that situation, but it would have been too difficult to live. Only a coward would choose to die, and only a true warrior would be able to survive such a blow. Death is the end of everything, but living on, one has to bear too much. You're alive, and you're not crazy. 3rd uncle, you're a good man. Junwoo laughed bitterly. Who says I don't want to die? I want to die, but I can't die. I can't die. Emosia, your grandfather has 3 sons. 2 of them are dead. If I die as well, your grandfather will really collapse. Then, the June family will be finished. Jun Moxie was silent. Junwoo, he had kept these matters bottled up in his heart for a long time. Today, he had met an old friend, an enemy, and an enemy, which had evoked his memories of the past. Then, he had received a keepsake from his former lover, which had left his mind in turmoil. Moreover, his body had just recovered, and his emotions were easily stirred up. So, he had unwittingly spoken so much that he couldn't stop himself. All these years, whenever I closed my eyes, my 2 brothers would ask me, Woo, why didn't you take revenge for us? Whenever I closed my eyes, my brothers would call out to me, 3rd General, take revenge for us. Take revenge for us. Take revenge for us. Junwoo clenched his fists. His face was ferocious. His body was taut like a bow. His palms were dripping with blood. Even in my dreams, I can feel the blood of my brothers. It's still warm and fresh. It's still flowing in front of my eyes. Junwoo crouched down and covered his face with his hands. His shoulders were trembling. June Moxie took a deep breath. He looked up at the night sky. Suddenly, he felt the blood in his body surge. The killing intent that had been dormant for a long time burst out. Ling Ling smiled. Silver Blizzard City? Shao family? Very good. Do you think you can do whatever you want? Haha. For the time being, you'll be my target. I don't mind stepping on your path to the peak of this world. Since I'm June Moxie now, I will bear the shame and glory of the June family. Silver Blizzard City's Shao family? Humph. In a few years' time, this evil monarch will make sure that not even a mouse remains in the Shao family. Far away in the shadows, Junjian Tian stood there in sadness. Looking at his only son, his only grandson, Grandpa Jun's heart was filled with mixed feelings. Third brother, do you really think I don't know the bitterness in your heart? Silver Blizzard City's Shao family, do you think I don't want to take revenge? Do you think that you can hide these things from me just because you didn't say it? All these years, when has this blood feud not been in my heart? But behind us, there is still the June family, our descendants, and tens of thousands of followers. If the June family were to let their emotions affect their decisions, the June family's descendants would be secondary. Their political enemies would uproot the entire June family. That would be a bloodbath. Junjian Tian stood there quietly for a moment. Then, he disappeared into the night wind. Only the uncle and nephew were left. One was sitting and the other was standing in the night wind. They listened to the sobbing of the wind. The bleakness of late autumn drifted through Tianxiang City overnight. Autumn passed day by day. Tianxiang City appeared to be tranquil on the surface. However, it was surging violently in the dark. At least a few hundred messenger birds flapped their wings and flew into the night sky, drawing out beautiful trajectories. There were also many high-level Xian experts who had suddenly ended their long years of secluded cultivation. One by one, they came out from their hiding places and shuttled through the streets and alleys of Tianxiang City. They were trying their best to listen to any gossip and pay attention to any unusual movements. They were like the most dutiful constables who were closely watching the dark side of the capital. Many people on the continent had received the news in just a few days. They were so excited that they couldn't wait to fly to the Tianxiang City. Chapter 120. All of the above was caused by the sudden appearance of an inexplicable piece of news. That inexplicable piece of news, it turned out that the Northern City clan had been wiped out by the mysterious organization during the recent riots in Tianxiang City. The Tang family of the Tianxiang aristocratic family had launched a large-scale search. The reason why the Tang family had lowered their status was because they had lost an extremely important item, the Xiandan of a peak level 9 Xian beast. This piece of news, which had yet to be finalized, started from a small rumor and spread rapidly. It was as if it had grown wings and was like a hurricane spreading throughout the entire continent in an extremely short period of time. This is an opportunity to recapture the Xiandan. In the Grand Preceptor's mansion, Li Yuran was standing in front of Li Shang's sickbed. Her face was covered with a light green veil as she spoke resolutely. Oh, in the past, we went through a lot of trouble, but we were still the oriole behind the mantis, stalking the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. In the end, we got nothing. How can we say that this is an opportunity? Grand Preceptor Li Shang's complexion had improved a lot. Although he was still very weak, he was no longer in a precarious state like he had claimed to be. In fact, he could even speak normally. At this moment, there was a look of understanding in his eyes as he looked at his grandson. He wanted his grandson to say it out loud. Ever since he had failed to restore his Dantian, his old life had been saved. However, his body's condition had deteriorated day by day. Grand Preceptor Li Shang was somewhat disheartened. He was well aware of his body's condition and was afraid that he wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Therefore, he had been trying his best to cultivate his eldest grandson, Li Yuran. No matter what problem he encountered, he would first ask for Li Yuran's opinion before pointing out any shortcomings. Li Yuran didn't disappoint him. During this period of time, her temperament and shrewdness had improved by leaps and bounds. Her understanding of certain matters had become very sharp. Even Grand Preceptor Li had to sigh at her inferiority. This was because Li Shang's heart was cold, but at the same time, he was comforted. After all, he finally had a successor. The current situation is very clear. The Tang family's Xiandan had been stolen. In this world, there were probably only 3 groups of people who knew about it. Of course, old Master Tang wouldn't be so stupid as to leak this information and bring trouble to his family. We couldn't leak this information either. The Xiandan was too important, and the more people who knew about it, the more competitors there would be. Our goal is to seize the Xiandan before anyone else finds out. Since it wasn't either of us who leaked the secret, the only person who could have leaked it would be the person who obtained Xiandan. In other words, as long as we find this person, we will be able to retrieve the complete Xiandan. On that day, he was at Oriole while we made a wedding dress for him, allowing that person to obtain the Xiankor and gain a huge advantage. That person should have disappeared without a trace. So it's not surprising that there hasn't been any movement for such a long time, and it's only reasonable. But now, he suddenly leaked this information and exposed the existence of the 9th grade Xiandan. This is puzzling. He didn't leave any traces that day. But today, he made such an unwise move. He must have his own intentions. As for his intentions, I'm stupid. I can only deduce a few things. First, although he has obtained the Xiandan, he doesn't know how to use it. He doesn't even understand the true function of the Xiandan. He has obtained it, but he doesn't use it. Therefore, he needs to attract strong people to come here and fish in troubled waters to inquire about the function of the Xiandan. This is the first reason. Tang Wanli has studied the method of absorbing the 9th grade Xiandan for decades. He has also inquired about it for decades, but he still hasn't fully understood it. Even we, if not for my master's guidance, I'm afraid we wouldn't know about it. Go on. Li Shang showed a look of appreciation. Secondly, this person is most likely from the Tianxiang city. Moreover, he must be a top-notch expert. In fact, he might have even reached the bottleneck of his Xianqi cultivation. Otherwise, he wouldn't have released the news at this time. After all, wouldn't it be better to wait patiently for the news to die down? Therefore, I believe that this person is on the verge of a breakthrough. Yes. Is there a third reason? Li Shang's eyes were full of admiration. Third, this person must have the confidence to get what he needs before the strong people arrive. If so, this person must have a very powerful intelligence network. From this point of inference, I'm more than 80% sure that this person is from one of the most powerful families in the capital. Moreover, he has the qualifications to mobilize the power of his entire family. This is why he is so bold and confident. Li Yuren's voice was a little cautious. That's a good analysis. This way, we can narrow down the target to a small area. Li Shang clapped his hands. He was very pleased in his heart. Who are you suspecting now? Our Li family can be ruled out first. The Tang family can also be ruled out. The rest are the Jun family, the Mu Rong family, the Dugu family, the Meng family, and the Song family. These 5 families are all possible. Li Yuran bent her fingers one by one. However, the Jun family is our old enemy. But, considering Jun Zhantian's integrity, I don't think he would do such a thing. Jun Wui may be physically disabled, but his heart is not. But he is still disabled, so it's difficult for him to move around. As for Jun Moxie, he's still a debauchee. I'm afraid that he doesn't have the qualifications to mobilize the power of his family. Therefore, the Jun family is the least suspicious at the moment. But we can't completely rule them out. Anything is possible. The possibility of the Dugu family is not very high, although they are powerful and have the ability to be the Oriole. But fundamentally speaking, the Dugu family lacks ambition. Otherwise, the Dugu family would have replaced the Jun family a long time ago. The reason why His Majesty tolerates the Dugu family is because the Dugu family has talented warriors. But, unlike the Jun family, which has talented generals, the Dugu family can charge and break through the enemy lines. But if they want to be like Jun Wu Hui, Jun Wu Ming, Jun Wui, or Jun Zhantian, they can command the entire army. But the Dugu family definitely doesn't have such talents. In other words, if the Dugu family could produce such a person, I'm afraid that His Majesty would immediately suppress the entire family. After all, the Dugu family is not like the June family, who have saved His Majesty's life many times. But even if the June family has done so much, and their descendants are too outstanding, didn't they still end up like this? How could the Dugu family be an exception? So, although the Dugu family is big and has many descendants, they don't have the cohesiveness of the June family. Although the June family seems to be in decline, the four marshals who have always been victorious are enough to shake the entire kingdom. So, although the Dugu family is slightly more suspicious than the June family, they are still on the edge. To put it bluntly, I really don't see any of the Dugu family schemes. The Meng family, firstly, is our ally. Secondly, the Meng family doesn't have any particularly outstanding people. So, their chances aren't great. For the time being, they can only be ranked third. Among the aristocratic families, the Song family has always been the most low-key, but a dog that bites never barks. So, the suspicion this time is really not small. It's only second to the Morong family. The Morong family has always had a deep foundation, ambition, and scheming. Moreover, they use their status as a relative of the emperor to look down on the other aristocratic families. So, in this matter, we must pay special attention to the Morong family. Li Yuran carefully analyzed. Her words were spoken very slowly, and it was obvious that she was thinking nervously. Not bad. Li Shang nodded. But, apart from these families, there are a few other directions that you haven't mentioned yet. Please advise me, grandfather. Li Yuran said, there is still one of the biggest aristocratic families in this city. You don't seem to have considered it. The royal family. The royal family is the most powerful family. Although His Majesty is still hiding his strength, I'm afraid that His Majesty would have been assassinated many times over if he didn't have the protection of several top experts. You must pay special attention to this point. Also, there are 3 big gangs in Tianxiang City. They also have considerable strength. So, you must pay attention to them. In addition, we can't completely rule out the possibility of a mysterious expert hiding in Tianxiang City. Also, there are several well-known assassin organizations that have been active in Tianxiang City for some time. These are all possible targets. Li Shang coughed a few times and propped himself up with difficulty. Then, he opened his eyes wide. This Xiandan incident is bound to cause an unprecedented storm. Yuran, you must be cautious. Also, we don't have enough strength right now. If your master can come here personally, then we'll have a higher chance of success. If he can't come, then you should ask your senior brothers to come here as soon as possible. Otherwise, I advise you to withdraw from this competition. It could be a disaster at any time. Li Shang sighed and lay back on the bed. Yes, I have already sent out the 1,000 miles Oriole in the early morning. I believe that master has already received it. Li Yuran nodded heavily. How is your Xinqi progress? Li Shang asked with his eyes closed. I have already reached the peak of the gold level. Li Yuran's voice sounded a little guilty, but my realm is still a little unstable. Once it stabilizes, I will be able to attack you, Xian. But this matter... Li Shang raised his hand and stopped her from speaking. Don't say that this matter was unintentional. Even if I knew the consequences, I would still gladly help you. After all, you are the Li family's biggest hope in the future. You don't have to worry about this matter too much. Li Yuran sighed. The last time he had used the seabed jade coral to treat Li Shang's injuries, Li Shang had suffered serious injuries due to an inexplicable explosion. However, Li Yuran's face had been blasted open, and his pretty boy face had been completely ruined. However, fortune and misfortune were often accompanied by fortune. Li Yuran had gained a lot of benefits from this incident. The spiritual energy in the seabed jade coral had to be stimulated by Li Yuran first before Li Shang could further absorb it. During the explosion, because of the sudden interruption, a considerable amount of spiritual energy had coincidentally stayed in Li Yuran's meridians. It could be considered as a blessing in disguise. During this period of time, Li Yuran did not go out because of the injury on his face. Under the help of that energy, he actually advanced from the initial stage of the gold level to the peak of the gold level. Just one step, and he would be a jade level Xian. With Li Yuren's age, although this speed of advancement was not unprecedented, it was enough to show disdain for the current generation. Chapter 121. The reason for the destruction of a northern city clan has long been investigated. There are too many coincidences in this world. The cause was Qin Hu's son, Qin Xiaobao. This little debauchee had unintentionally offended Tang Yuan and Jun Moxi, two big debauches that he could not afford to offend. The two of them retaliated with a personal grudge. With their interference, the destruction of the northern city clan was only a matter of time. However, I do not know if I'm being too paranoid, but I feel that something is not right. However, I'm unable to pinpoint the specifics. Li Yuran stood up and slowly paced back and forth. Now that we have lost the eyes and ears of the northern city clan, we have lost a lot of sources of information. We must make up for this as soon as possible. The matters of the family, I will leave it to you to decide. Li Shang closed his eyes. I originally wanted to recommend you to the imperial court, but since you insist on not doing so, then we will talk about it later. However, Yuran, the foundation of the Li family is still in the imperial court, and not in Jianghu. You must bear this in mind. I know that you have great ambitions, but everything must be done according to one's capabilities. Taking risks and hoping for a fluke cannot be repeated. It is better to be careful than to sail a ship for 10,000 years. This grandson understands. Li Yuran was silent for a long time before replying with her head lowered. A gust of autumn wind blew, and yellow leaves filled the sky. The fluttering yellow leaves sparkled under the sunlight, as if a golden rain had suddenly fallen between heaven and earth. Two people with ordinary faces and clothes were calmly walking on the streets of Tianxiang City. One of them had a sallow complexion, but his stature was exceptionally tall and straight. The sharpness in his eyes didn't match his sallow complexion. The other person was a young man with a slightly darker complexion. Tianxiang City has changed a lot in the past 10 years. The middle-aged man slowly walked, his eyes slowly turning from the two sides of the road. His voice was desolate, as if he was an old man who had just experienced the vicissitudes of life and had suddenly returned to the normal world. That place used to be the Yi clan's ancestral home more than 10 years ago. Back then, many of us brothers played there since we were young. He laughed, but his voice sounded like he was crying. Third uncle, do you also feel as if a lifetime has passed? The young man beside him smiled. In the end, it'll be fine once you get used to it. Everyone has to die. Be it as a person or as a commander, one has to be able to accept life and death. If you can't see past life and death, no matter what you do, you won't achieve much. Letting go of life and death is easier said than done. The middle-aged man sighed. 10 years have passed in this dream, and everything is desolate. My brothers have all turned into dust. Now I look around, and I am alone. Third uncle, look at our feet. The youth smiled warmly, but there was a hint of mockery in his smile. It was a smile of mockery towards life, a smile of mockery towards the world. At this moment, the youth's eyes carried a look of indifference, as if he had seen through the past and present. He pointed at the ground under his feet. Third uncle, do you know how many people have been buried under this ground for thousands of years? In a sense, we are actually stepping on other people's corpses at every moment. At this moment, we might be stepping on a beggar, and at the next moment, we might be stepping on the remains of an emperor. Whether it's the mountains, rivers, or thick soil, it's not an exaggeration to say that they are all accumulated from corpses. Life and death are just like the withering and flourishing of plants. In the end, what does it matter? One day you, or I, will also be lying under this ground for others to step on. But the most important thing is now. Right now, we are stepping on other people all the time. Whether he was an overlord who once ruled over an area, an emperor who once made great contributions, or a beauty who could cause the downfall of a nation, isn't there no reaction now? So, before we're stepped on by others, we must stand at a height where no one can step on us. In the future, only we can step on others, whether it's the living or the dead. Ha! He laughed arrogantly. If that's the case, what's there to remember? Where is the time to remember the dead? No matter if it's a mountain of knives or a sea of fire, step on them all. No matter if it's a noble or a general, kill them all. No matter if it's a mountain or a sea, go F***ck them all. As long as we are alive, we must have no regrets. Even if we are wrong, we must not regret. Right and wrong, right and wrong, right and wrong, who can say clearly? As long as we are alive, we must enjoy ourselves. Live freely and freely, live as we please. Whoever we don't like, step on them. Whoever offends us, injures us, we must kill them. As for those who stand in our way, we must destroy them. As long as we are alive, no matter if we are male or female, we only need to face the heavens proudly, look down on the earth, move unhindered under the heavens, and look down on the wind and clouds. Only then will we not have wasted our time in this world. The youth's eyes coldly observed everything around him. The rest, at best, is just a game. That's all. These two people were strange. It was actually the young one consoling and preaching to the old. This strange uncle-nephew duo was naturally the uncle and nephew duo of Jun Wooey and Jun Moxie. Jun Wooey had not left the Jun residence for 10 years. In order to let him relax, Jun Moxie suggested to change his appearance and travel. Jun Wooey happily agreed. Then, the uncle and nephew duo slipped out and strolled around the capital. Jun Moxie's disguise technique was inherited from a peerless master of disguise in his previous life. It could be said that it was a combination of ancient and modern techniques. It could be said that in the entire Xian continent, there was no one who could recognize their original appearance. So, the two of them boldly strolled around the capital. Xia, I really didn't expect you to be so. Jun Wooey listened to Jun Moxie's words and shook his head with a smile. If I didn't look at you, I'm afraid even I would think that you're an old man who has experienced the vicissitudes of life and death. Jun Xia smiled bitterly in his heart. I'm afraid that I've experienced much more than those old fogies you speak of. I've lived 2 lives, not just in name, but also in reality. This was the first Prince's Hall of Virtue 10 years ago. Who would have thought that it would become the Hall of Huanghua today? I really wonder if there's any power in the capital that dares to compete with the first prince for territory. Jun Wooey frowned as he looked at a concave on the left side of the road. It was an inconspicuous pavilion. Behind it, there was a continuous rise and fall. It turned out to be a big house. A faint mournful cry came from inside. The voice was weak and full of despair. Hall of Huanghua, what does it mean? Don't tell me it's the meaning of the Hall of Huanghua in the past. The passers-by who passed by the Hall of Huanghua would hide far away from the entrance. It was as if there were venomous snakes and fierce beasts hiding inside. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear and even hatred. When they passed by the entrance, they hastened their footsteps and hurriedly passed by. Jun Moxie quickly searched his mind and said, Hall of Huanghua. It seems to be a place similar to a brothel. However, the age of the people here is relatively young. Moreover, there are some good-looking ****. As he said this, Jun Moxie's heart suddenly surged with a strong anger. This place is basically a transit station for the sale of young boys and girls. If the aptitude is good, they will be secretly sent away. If the aptitude is not good, but the person is smart and handsome, they will be trained and then sold to the rich families at a high price to make a huge profit. As for the worst ones, they will stay here. After a few years, when they grow up, they will be sold to the Spirit Fog Lake as playthings for men and women. It can be said that this place is a place of evil. Jun Wooey's eyes widened as he looked sharply at the Hall of Huanghua. I didn't expect that the imperial capital of Tianxiang Empire would have such a despicable place. Don't tell me that the government doesn't care about it. Jun Moxie sighed. In name, the eldest prince had let go of this place a long time ago. However, in reality, who could say for sure what was going on? Who would have the guts to jump out and get stabbed? This used to be the Crown Prince's territory. Even if the Crown Prince didn't secretly make the decision, but how could the people who were able to take over the territory from the Crown Prince be ordinary? The imperial capital was a place that didn't handle all kinds of lawsuits. Behind any random person involved, there could be a royal family, a minister, or even a descendant of the emperor. Who would have the guts to try? Besides, these people had taken in homeless children under the guise of buying and selling real money, which was tantamount to making them their slaves. Who would say anything about it? It's really a foul atmosphere. What a disappointment. Jun Wui snorted coldly. He took a few deep looks and walked away from the door unwillingly. He had disguised himself today, and it wasn't convenient for him to reveal anything. Moreover, the news of Jun Wui's recovery had to be kept strictly confidential. Even if he was unwilling, he had no choice but to leave. The two of them had only walked a few dozen feet when they suddenly heard a mournful cry behind them. Then there was a loud thud, and a figure fell to the ground in the middle of the street. It was a young girl in disheveled clothes. There was a large footprint on her back, and her pretty face was contorted in pain. Blood was constantly spilling out of her mouth, and her eyes were lifeless. It seemed that she wouldn't be able to live. However, she was still begging in a low voice, "Please, let my brother. Brother, please, don't let him be. Sister." Then there was a sharp cry, and a thin and weak child could be vaguely seen rushing out with all his might. The man at the door stretched out his hand to stop him. The child's face was full of anxiety, and he struggled with all his might. However, how could a mere child escape from the grip of an adult man? The child was anxious and suddenly opened his mouth to bite the man's arm. The man retracted his hand in pain, and the child finally took the opportunity to rush out, running towards the dying young girl on the street. The young girl looked at the little figure running towards her, and her eyes revealed joy and worry. She reluctantly stretched out a bloody palm to meet her brother. At this moment, a voice scolded, and then a sharp sound broke through the air. The child's small body, which was running at high speed, suddenly twisted, like a sugar cane that was suddenly cut off. With a plop, he fell heavily to the ground. His spine was actually broken by a punch in the air. Without making a sound, he had already stopped breathing. His corpse slid a few feet on the ground, and his eyes were bulging with anger. One of his hands was stretched forward, but it was still half a foot away from his sister's palm. This half a foot distance was actually a distance that the two siblings could not cross even with their lives on the line. The child was actually walking in front of his dying sister. The young girl howled in grief and indignation and tried her best to crawl towards her brother's small body. However, she could only struggle a few times and could no longer move. She stared at her once beautiful big eyes, and finally, the light in them dissipated, but she still refused to die in peace. Although her breathing had stopped, her slender hand still stubbornly stretched out in the direction of her brother. Pa! A small sound was heard, and a copper coin that was missing half of its side fell out of the girl's bosom. It was stained with the blood of the two siblings, and it rolled around for a long time. Then, it crooked at Jun Mo Sie's feet, and as luck would have it, it leaned against Jun Mo Sie's shoe and stopped moving. What a sin! How many times has it been this month? Sigh. These children are really pitiful. A passerby muttered to himself in a low voice. He then shook his head and quickly escaped. They were originally bought slaves. What kind of sin is it to punish their own slaves? A person muttered in disapproval. Many people's faces were filled with pity, and their eyes were filled with indignation. However, they did not dare to speak. In the blink of an eye, everyone had left. The densely packed street had unexpectedly disappeared in an instant. Bastards! Jun Wui heard the voice and turned around to squeeze through the crowd. However, it was already too late for him to redeem the situation. He couldn't help but fly into a rage. How can you be so cruel to such a small child? Do you still have any humanity? Do you have any justice? Several big men at the entrance had an evil smile on their faces as they looked at the bloody scene that they had created with their own hands. They felt some evil pleasure in their hearts. However, they had never thought that someone would openly stand up and denounce them. This was something that hadn't happened in a long time for the Huanghua Hall. You ignorant wretch, mind your own business. Go home and drink your mother's milk. If you dare to talk nonsense again, I will make you suffer the same fate as those two sluts. Law and justice? I am the justice of the king. The big man who had been bitten opened his eyes wide and grinned nastily. Jun Wui's attire was that of a scholar's. Moreover, his robe was very ordinary. He looked like a scholar who had failed to pass the imperial examination. How dare you? Jun Wui was unable to restrain his anger. How dare you treat people's lives as if they are grass at the foot of the imperial city? How dare you trample on the law? Jun Mo Xie's head was lowered at this time, and he was looking at the half of the copper coin at his feet in a daze. The murderous intent in his heart had soared at this moment, and a familiar yet strange feeling had suddenly rushed into his heart. This broken copper coin had taken advantage of the weak vibration and had coincidentally passed through the feet of several people and had landed on his shoes. Entrusted? Or was this the will of the heavens? At this moment, Jun Moxie seemed to have returned to his previous life. He had become the king of assassins, the evil monarch. Jun Moxie. Slowly bending down, Jun Moxie picked up the broken copper coin with an abnormal solemnity. He clasped it in his palm and said in a low voice, "Don't worry, I have accepted your entrustment. This is the first transaction of my life. The heavens have eyes." He slowly raised his head and looked at the dazzling 3 words Huanghua Hall. Jun Moxie's eyes slowly narrowed. The sharp light in his narrowed eyes was like a ray of sunlight piercing through the dark clouds in the sky. It made the surging, murderous aura on his body somewhat dazzling. I don't care what kind of story is hidden behind this. I don't even know who this little girl is and what is her identity. I also don't want to know the strength behind the Huanghua Hall. I only know that I must do this. I have received money from others, and I will help others eliminate disasters. A copper coin is also money, and a broken copper coin is still money. I have received this copper coin, and I have received the reward. Since I have received the reward, then these people must die. Chapter 122. I'm just a killer. When someone needs me to kill someone, I'll do it. I'll be a killer's hand. Jun Wui was about to rush forward when a hand rested on his shoulder. The owner of the hand was Jun Moxie. Third uncle, I'm really curious. You're a valiant general on the battlefield, an expert in battle. How could you do such a thing? Jun Moxie smiled. Jun Wui didn't understand. You're talking to them about the law? Is that useful? If they cared about the law, they wouldn't kill people in public. Didn't you hear them? They're the law. In their eyes, the law was just a tool that they could do without. As for you talking to them about humanity, if they still have a little bit of humanity left, they wouldn't do something as cruel as killing children. Don't you think you're stupid to talk about humanity with an animal? Jun Moxie said flatly. Oh, then what do you think I should do? Jun Wui said resolutely. Well, just do what I did. Isn't it a good choice? Jun Moxie's body took a strange step back. His eyes were still looking at Jun Wui. His expression didn't change. His eyes were still as warm as water. His right hand went straight back. Jun Moxie's 5 fingers went straight into the throat of the burly man. Jun Moxie tightened his grip. Crack! The man's throat was crushed. The burly man was provoked by Jun Wui's law. He strode forward, wanted to teach this poor man a lesson. Who knew that as soon as he got near, Jun Moxie would use him as a model. For people like this, you either ignore them or... Jun Moxie pulled out his hand and elegantly wiped the blood off the burly man's body. He didn't look back. He pushed the burly man's body to the ground. Jun Moxie then continued slowly. Or, you must eliminate all evils. The burly man's eyes widened in shock. His eyes met the little girl's hateful eyes. Perhaps he didn't think that his death was caused by the little girl's hiring killer. A copper coin with a gap was the price he had to pay for his life. No, he wasn't worth that penny. There were many lives that would disappear because of that penny. Even the girl herself would not have thought that her vengeance would be avenged. nor would she have known that she would be able to hire a peerless god of death with just a single copper coin. But if she knew this in the underworld, she would be smiling in the underworld. The heavens was clear. This was because the moment June Moxie picked up the little girl's only wealth, her entire wealth, that chipped copper coin, the king of assassins had made a decision in his heart. From now on, the evil monarch would fight to the death with the Hall of Hell and the people behind it, exterminate them to the last man. Jun Wooey was speechless when he saw June Moxie's indifferent expression. Sia, it's enough to teach them a lesson. Is it necessary to exterminate them to the last man? This kind of person should be dealt with according to the law. That is the right way. Third uncle, although you are upright and just, I have to say that you are too pedantic. The sound of messy footsteps came from behind. June Moxie didn't turn his head and said, "Why don't you try to reason with them? See if you can persuade them? Even if you reveal your identity and order the officials to punish them, what can they do? I can guarantee that they will be released as soon as they turn around. Then, the scene today will continue. Haha, it's really funny." The remaining burly men at the door saw their companions die tragically. They roared and rushed forward. Third uncle, actually, we martial artists have to remember one thing. Jun Sia laughed lightly. His face was calm after changing his appearance, but his eyes were as deep as water, with a faint glint in them. He ignored the man who was rushing towards him from behind. It seems that since they could be so unscrupulous, then the laws of Tianxiang Kingdom can no longer bind these people. Haha, when the law becomes an umbrella for evil, when the higher-ups use evil to achieve their own goals, when the evil people are arrogant, but no one can punish them properly, this is the time when people like us will inevitably appear. Remember, at this time, the justice in our hearts cannot be restricted by the law. It will become a sharp blade that kills. Kill to stop killing. Use violence to control violence, and ruthlessly eliminate these scum of the world. This is justice. There is no need to worry about the heavenly laws and reincarnation. Those are nothing more than dog's fart. Regarding this, I can only kill. Jun Moxie smiled faintly. He was still facing Jun Wooey, and his back was still facing the burly men behind him. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, and his expression was tranquil. But in an instant, he suddenly turned around and rushed into the group of burly men like lightning. With a few kacha-kacha sounds, he instantly passed through them. Jun Moxie's tall figure did not even turn his head as he leisurely stepped into the hall of Huanghua. His movements were calm and confident, as if he had come to visit a friend. Behind him, one of the burly men was holding a saber in his hand. His throat had turned into a big bloody hole. Another man's chest was clearly caved in, and the third man's crotch was bleeding profusely. The last man's neck had been twisted, and his head hung limply. All dead, until Jun Moxie's figure disappeared from the hall of Huanghua. The four corpses fell one after another. These men's skills were only that of ordinary people, and their xianqi was at most second or third level. But Jun Wooey could clearly see that Jun Moxie had only used one move to kill each of them. No, it should be said that it was only one move. But no one could dodge this one move. In fact, they couldn't even react to it. One strike to kill, there was no luck involved. What a terrible killing technique. What if he could avoid it? Jun Wooey pondered for a moment. It wouldn't have been difficult for me to dodge it if I had been on full alert. But Sia's killer move was enough to kill an ordinary silver-level xianqi expert in a fair fight. As for a higher-level expert, Jun Wooey suddenly came to his senses. His nephew had already rushed in, so he couldn't run into any danger. This hall of Huanghua had dared to be so brazen. So there must be some hidden experts inside. So he hastily followed behind Jun Moxie and rushed into the hall of Huanghua. Jun Wooey was shocked as he looked around. 5 or 6 corpses had been lying in disorder since he had entered the hall of Huanghua's entrance. And the injuries on each of these corpses were the same. Their throats had been smashed, and their bones had been crushed. Jun Wooey rushed in like a whirlwind, and he finally saw Jun Moxie's figure entering and exiting the rooms in a calm and fast manner. And he was cruel and elegant at the same time. June Moxie didn't let go of any of the people who had rushed out of the room. It didn't matter if they were men or women. There were enemies in front of him, but there wasn't a single living person behind him, except for Jun Wooey. Not a single one. Jun Wooey was undoubtedly worrying too much. The Hall of Huang Hua might have the support of a very strong force behind it, but this place was only a branch of this organization. So it was only responsible for buying and selling goods. So there weren't many experts here. Moreover, Jun Moxie's attacks were sharp and ruthless to the extreme. The guards who had come out of the Hall of Huang Hua fell down immediately, and the madams and prostitutes didn't know any martial arts. But Jun Moxie didn't show any mercy, so none of them survived. Jun Wooey was an expert who had already reached the realm of Tian Xian, but he didn't get the opportunity to attack. He acted as a bodyguard. Moreover, he acted as a very incompetent bodyguard, and he acted as a follower and a spectator. Jun Mo's expression remained calm throughout. He moved like the wind, and with a ka sound, he broke the throat of another guard. Then he raised his leg again and changed the angle of his attack. His leg struck the crotch of another guard on the right, and that guard screamed miserably as blood flowed out of his 7 orifices, and he collapsed to the ground. Along the way, there was blood and corpses. Boom! 3 silhouettes burst through the inner courtyard's door. They stood at the entrance. "Who are you people? How dare you come here to cause trouble? Do you know where this place is?" It was a middle-aged man in his 40s. "Come here to cause trouble? I didn't. I was just entrusted by someone to kill people. Why would I cause trouble?" Jun Moxie said with a smile. While he was talking, he didn't relax his foot. The remaining 3 people in front of him fell down in 3 different directions. Along the way, he didn't let any of them go. There were already 40 to 50 corpses lying on the ground. "How dare you? Who entrusted you to do this?" The middle-aged man was obviously trying to be fierce. "Do you know where this place is? Who does this place belong to?" Jun Moxie couldn't be bothered with him. He turned his head and said, "Third uncle, I'm a little tired. I'll leave these 3 people to you. You can also exercise your muscles. But you have to finish this quickly. This is the capital city after all. There will be soldiers arriving soon." "Soldiers?" Jun Wooey smiled coldly and nodded. Suddenly, he stretched his body and flew forward like a big bird. A pale blue light suddenly flashed. Elegant but cruel. "Ah, Tian Xian is strong." The 3 of them cried out in pain. Before they could finish their words, they were already sent flying. Tian Xian was a powerhouse against a few silver-leveled Xian practitioners. It was as easy as crushing dry weeds. He didn't even need to use his strength, and it was already over. Jun Wooey didn't want to kill indiscriminately. But now, Jun Moxie had deliberately escalated the matter to an unmanageable stage. It was obvious that he wanted to kill them all. Moreover, time was of the essence. Jun Wooey had no choice but to take the lead and start sweeping. Besides, the people here weren't innocent. Killing indiscriminately was killing indiscriminately. Although Third Master Jun was still very dissatisfied with Jun Moxie's way of doing things. While Jun Wooey was sweeping everywhere, Jun Moxie quickly rushed into a room and searched for a while. Then, bang 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 sound were heard. The hitman threw 2 big boxes into the courtyard. He picked up a knife and cut open the boxes. Suddenly, shining white silver, glistening gold, and banknotes were scattered all over the courtyard. Jun Wooey was surprised. He saw that Jun Moxie had already picked up his knife and cut open a few rooms in the corner. He shouted, "Come out, take the silver, and leave quickly. Once you get out, go east." Suddenly, dozens of boys and girls rushed out. When a last sealed door was opened, an indescribable smell assailed their nostrils. Seeing the scene inside, Jun Wooey suddenly felt that his previous hesitation and accusations against his nephew were simply condoning and harboring criminals. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.